across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Petrie here with you for the next 3 hours. And of course, coming up at midnight, it is your chance to talk back. And later on in the programme, I'm going to be talking about the fact that the WHO, the World Health Organization, now has just stripped us of our measles record. It has taken it away. We've lost our measles elimination status, along with many countries in Europe. And we had pretty much eliminated measles in this country until there was a drop-off in vaccine uptake. There needs to be a 95% of people taking a vaccine for measles in order to prevent its spread. And we have seen hundreds of cases, and America has seen hundreds of cases as well. So there's been a real problem, and measles is actually very, very dangerous. So, and it always puzzles me a bit actually when we talk about vaccines, and people are very nervous and worried about taking vaccines at the moment, because I always think to myself, there are mothers in places around the world who would walk for 9 days, 10 days, a week, 3 weeks to get their children vaccinated. They would do anything that they could to protect their children. But we here in the West seem to have got a bit cocky about it, a bit cocky about diseases. Well, you don't see many measles cases anymore, so I'll be fine. Well, no, the reason you don't see many measles cases anymore is because people have been vaccinated against measles, vaccinated against all sorts of things. But what I want to talk to you about at midnight is, have you lost faith in vaccines? Are you somebody who won't use a vaccine, won't have a vaccine? And what has led you to that? I mean, we know that Andrew Wakefield's bogus and completely false study into MMR linked to autism has led to an enormous distrust of vaccines. The man should be in jail. I mean, he should be held personally responsible for anybody that dies through fear of reading his bogus report, which, by the way, has been restudied hundreds of times, and not one study found any causal link at all between the MMR and autism. So it just fascinates me how people are now losing trust in possibly the greatest ever health invention of humankind, and that is the vaccine. Whatever vaccine it is possibly saved more lives than anything else that has been invented by human beings. So I just wonder why you've lost faith in it. I'd love to hear from you on that. Could you give me a call? Give me a call at midnight. 0344 499 1000. So calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. So that's coming up. I've got a problem with my microphone. I can hear it. Let me just adjust that. Is that slightly better? Thank you. Right, so that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight. So I'd love to hear from you on that. Or do you take that? Are you a great believer in vaccines? I am. I'll take any drug that they're prepared to give me, to be perfectly honest with you. So that's coming up as well. What else is coming up is that we're going to be talking about the youngsters in Northern Ireland who now have to have a sort of gradated driver's test. So when they pass, they'll go onto R plates. So they're not immediately allowed. I mean, when you think about it, when we were younger and we got our licences, you take a couple of lessons. In my day, you didn't have to do the written test, and then you'd be given a set of car keys on that day, and you could drive wherever you wanted to with whoever you want to in the car. And of course, what we're seeing is many, many young people be involved in fatal accidents. How many times have we heard about car crashes where 3 or 4 young people, teenagers, are dead you know, 4 or 5 if they pack the car too much. So Northern Ireland is trying to prevent this from happening by adopting this policy. So we'll be looking into that and what it actually means. But I also want to look at the psychology of young people and why it is they take those risks, the risks that you and I would never dream of taking now. But somehow in their brains they think that they're going to live forever, or the rules of science don't apply to them. I don't know what it is, but we'll be talking to a psychologist about that as well. But before all of that happens, we know that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has left for China ahead of his official visit there. The first British PM to visit Beijing in 8 years. The last one was Theresa May. She went there for 3 days, and it was way controversial at the time, I seem to remember. Ahead of his trip, Starmer said that the UK cannot afford to ignore the economic opportunities presented by China, and that the UK would not be forced to choose between China and the US. I suspect that Donald Trump will have something to say about that. Well, the trip comes days after the UK approved plans for a controversial new Chinese embassy in London. And Downing Street insisted the government would not trade economic access for national security. But what would it cost us to get deeper into bed with China? And what will we have to give up? Are we a big enough player for China to even take any of our suggestions to heart? We've always felt that with China, human rights problems, issues with prisoners that we feel should be released, all of those things have held us to a certain set of principles, if you like. Are we about to sell those principles for the sake of a trade deal? Well, with me to discuss that is Mark Logan, former MP and the Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary China Group. Mark, thank you so much for coming in. There are so many questions, and Keir Starmer must be sat on his aircraft now thinking, this is a tightrope. How do I walk it?
I think it's an absolutely first-class opportunity for us in the UK, and also for the Prime Minister to do something historic. And as you pointed out in the beginning there, in the lead up to this visit, there is a balancing act for the Prime Minister and for the UK to get correct, because obviously we're not a world superpower,
no,
but we're still a very important country. And as oftentimes I've said, is where the US and China have the most consequential bilateral relationship in the world. Actually, the UK and the Chinese, our bilateral relationship is actually much more historic. You know, it goes way back into the 18th century, even further back. If you look at the first Chinese person who was ever identified as living in the UK, he was a librarian at the University of Oxford. So it's an incredibly historic relationship. We have deep knowledge of China, likewise China does of us, but it doesn't mean that in the present, with domestic challenges, with pushback, you mentioned again the new embassy that's been signed off here close to the city of London.
It doesn't mean it's going to get built.
Well, I mean, it's a great point, because I think that for a long time, like working in China, the amazing thing was always you're looking out the window and the following morning a new building goes up. And, you know, and lots more people are joking about this now, is that, you know, the Chinese have overcome everything that the world and God throws at them, but can they overcome the planning system in London and the rest of the UK? But, you know, here I take a contrarian view on that particular issue on the Chinese embassy, because yes, there's a security risk, but we have the best, if not the leading intelligence services in the UK, and if they have not opposed it, we should listen to them.
MI5 wasn't happy about it.
Well, there's always going to be some reservations, because like anything in life, it's like we were saying earlier as well about kids. When I was 17, 18, when I was driving, there's always a risk to things. But again, if they're saying that they can mitigate the risk, that they can manage it, then we should absolutely listen to them.
But isn't it worrying that in order to mitigate risks from somebody we're planning to have a relationship with, you have to dig up the cables outside where they're planning to build the embassy so they don't steal data from us? I mean, that if that was a man that I was about to date, that would be a red flag. If I had to mitigate against that sort of thing, you'd go, well, maybe I won't get into that relationship. If I don't trust you, why am I getting into a relationship with you?
Well, it's because there is a risk, but there's also high reward involved. So China is 1.4 billion people, it has a burgeoning middle class. You know, it's still going through a change in its economy from investment-led into being more
Well, they buy very little
consumerist,
from us, don't they?
Well, up until now, there's an imbalance in the trading investment.
Huge.
It's like 70 billion to about 30 billion, roughly, between the two sides. But we offer something which the Germans, actually, in this day and age, don't offer to the same extent. Germany is probably the country that's benefited mostly from China over the last 30, 40 years, because they were producing the things like machinery that China needed. But we have our professional services, again, on the doorstep of your studio here when it comes to the law firms, which will be represented in Starmer's trip to China. We have, of course, our accountancy firms. We have our AstraZenecas of the world, life sciences. So we actually have things which we can offer to the Chinese. And that puts us in a better position, actually, than most countries. But at the same time, I think, Petrie, what's very important to understand, you've heard for years people say that, you know, Chinese goods is sort of kind of, you know, Amazon, and it's things that you maybe throw away after 2 or 3 weeks, right? But actually China has moved up the value chain, and increasingly China will offer answers to many of the problems that we're facing, whether it's in healthcare, public health, whether it's on climate change, whether or not you're a skeptic. But they produce absolutely amazing electric vehicles, which I've seen again firsthand just last week on my last trip
Just overtaken
to
Tesla,
China. Well, I mean, Tesla...
I mean, not literally on the road.
Well,
I don't know if they could. But, I mean,
but you know,
in sales
in
terms.
fairness to Tesla, one of the taxi drivers I had on a bit of a long haul trek in China, who was driving a Tesla, he said that Tesla, on balance, is still a better car than most of the other competitors. So I think Tesla, it might have the edge in some regards, but the Chinese are definitely biting at the heels when it comes to that technology development. So I think we do need a change. We do need a change of mindset. There is a mindset at play here. I know there's been a lot of fear. You know, I've been reading the newspapers and watching other programs, and it's usually exactly the same people saying exactly the same thing. But at its core, China, I do not believe this one bit. China does not, right, see us as an enemy. China,
No, I
at a
don't
leadership,
believe they do.
You don't, right? And at a leadership level, but even at a people-to-people level, they have so much respect and passion for the UK.
I don't believe
that's the
that
thing
they
that saddens.
see us,
That's the thing that saddens me the most.
Yeah.
Is that when you see all those Chinese students we have in the UK, they are genuinely, for the most part, obsessed with this country. And I wish it could be reciprocated, because they have such a great history, they have such a great culture. But we've got a lot of work to do on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do on that, and not least for Keir Starmer, the biggest thorn in his side, and I wonder if he is prepared to sell this in order to get some kind of deal with China, and that is Ukraine. Because China has been the biggest supporter of Russia through this conflict, through this war. That war, Russia would have collapsed by now had China not been supporting Russia to attack Ukraine. Our stance on Ukraine is, I think, pretty firm. It is that we support Ukraine against Russia. China supports Russia against Ukraine. China has been funding Russia, it's been supplying goods, it's been supplying everything that Russia needs. Their economy would have absolutely collapsed by now if China hadn't been doing that. How does Keir Starmer square that circle?
Well, unfortunately for the Prime Minister, this was a bit of a mess that was left to him by the previous administration, because actually when I served as a Conservative MP, in the first few days after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, I remember being at the back of the chamber and looking down to the minister at that time, I think it was Amanda Milling, and I made this point in the speech that I made, knowing China as well as I have done over the years, that you should not push China into the arms of Russia. And it went in one ear and out the other. Everyone's looking at the day-to-day issue, but the big strategic point is that you don't want these two countries to become closer and closer and closer, given the interdependencies that they have, whether it's on, you know, oil that they can provide to the Chinese and vice versa, other expertise. So I made that point. I made it very, very firm. That should never have happened. That was the biggest strategic error that we've made. And now we're seeing countries now are trying to maybe pull away from that. I mean, Trump, interestingly, in the United States, you know, he's had a much more open approach to Russia. Some call it, right, the reverse Kissinger, but vis-a-vis Russia. But even Trump, when he goes to China in April time, and this is very interesting. Again, I know you mentioned at the beginning of the show, is that people are concerned that maybe Trump will lean on us in the UK. But actually, when you look at the US National Defence Strategy, when you look at their national security strategy last year, again, they don't want to humiliate China. They want to have a trading deal with China. He's been very open, even on things like the semiconductor chips, where maybe other people in the administration haven't been. So that's an opportunity. There's an opportunity opening whereby there doesn't have to be as contested relationship with China and between the UK and with China.
Doesn't Keir Starmer really, if he has got a backbone, have to say, if you want to deal with us, if you want to be seen as the sensible superpower as opposed to America being a bit of a mess at the moment, you have got to stop supporting Russia. I cannot see Xi agreeing to that. I mean, we've seen his own military in turmoil at the moment. There's hardly any command structure at the moment because he sacked them all. So I can't see how Keir Starmer is going to both support Ukraine and want to get into bed with a country that is supporting Russia. I cannot see how that works geopolitically, morally, in any way.
I think, you know, looking at questions of, say, morality in relation to China's foreign policy, I've said this many times to senior Chinese politicians, to civil servants, equivalents on the Chinese side, is that up until today, for the most part, largely speaking, they have the moral upper hand when it comes to relations with external countries. Because
not with Russia.
No, but I mean in terms of they haven't fired a shot until this point, despite their sheer size. They've
given Russia guns to fire the shot, and that, as far as I'm concerned, is the same thing.
But I actually, Petrie, I accept the point that whenever the Prime Minister is in China, this should be something that's very high on the agenda. Especially, we've just seen today, I think the Times a few hours ago released a report was saying that those in Parliament felt that they had to kind of tone down the defence review last year and actually not telling the public that we were entering a time of, you know, potential war and that we had to be ready. You know, it's definitely something that I've felt and seen for a very long time, whether internationally or the breakdown domestically in order. And I think that obviously, you know, this unfortunately could be the beginning of many different fights and fallouts, and as the world, right, the international order changes. I mean, Russia being one example, but we've seen what's been happening in Arctic Circle with Greenland. We've had Venezuela. There's that concern, right, in the South China Sea. We've also had the Middle East, right? My former constituency, this was the single biggest issue was Palestine during my 4.5-year tenure at that time. So there's all these flashpoints happening across the world, and I don't want to be doom and gloom, saying to people.
Is China going to be a protective force for Britain, or it's not part of NATO? What happens? What happens if China attacks Taiwan? Well, you know, it is very unstable at the moment, and China have said that it is a national imperative. It's written into their constitution that they take Taiwan back into Chinese control. What happens then? You know, I mean, China isn't the stable force. Japan's worried about China and what might happen in that region. They've got this massive military. You know, I mean, they are not a benign, cuddly trading partner, and do you not think that Keir Starmer would be well to remember that China could try and take Taiwan at any time?
But I think, again, if he's speaking, right, with Xi Jinping tomorrow, UK time, is that's an opportunity for him to say similar things that I've been saying over especially the last 6 to 12 months, is that China maintains the upper hand morally when it comes to the issue of Taiwan, because it hasn't used force, which it's very capable of, right? It is the world's second biggest country. It has major spending on military. We see when it comes to shipbuilding that, you know, all the other countries added together in total can't compete with its sheer productive forces. So China, it does have the ability to do those things, but it hasn't yet. And I think
doesn't mean it won't.
Yeah, but that's
like I said, it is. You know that as well as I do. It is an imperative for China to take Taiwan. It's not a wish list. It's not Greenland and Trump. This is in their constitution.
And China has said that, and Xi Jinping from top down has said this multiple times. I mean, that China and Taiwan is an internal issue, and it will be resolved right one way or another from the Chinese perspective. But what we need to do is to say that actually it's not in your interest. I mean, the Taiwan Straits, just because of the sheer shipping volume that goes through there, to the Malacca Straits, the semiconductor industry in Taiwan, these are all vital to the world's economy. So it's in no one's interest. And I think, if anything, you know, I was meeting with Japanese contacts recently as well, and I was saying actually the UK, as well as the United States, could actually learn quite a lot from Japan in terms of its bilateral relationship with China, because they're neighbours. You know, they have quite a tense.
It's not a loving relationship.
Well, they have a very tense history, but they have been able to find ways over the last couple of decades to be able to cooperate. I mean, it's not a love-in. But maybe it's like the Chinese. I mean, I learnt more about British history from Chinese than I did at my primary secondary school growing up, because when they often said to me in Chinese, it was like 没有永远的朋友, which is like you've got no long forever friends, right? You only have interests that actually go on and on. It was Lord Palmerston, right, and paraphrasing the 19th century. So I think in the UK we need to have a hard-nosed approach to our own diplomacy. The special relationship, it's under a lot of pressure at the moment. That doesn't mean that it's over, but it is under a lot of pressure. Things have changed. Our relationship with the European Union, right? We have left the European Union, and also with the dynamic with China. So that's, I think, where Starmer, he has a real opportunity. This is a historic. But listen, it's much more historic than the May visit and the Cameron visit that I was part of 12 years ago. This is much more historic because the world is changing.
Yeah, this is very, very important. But let's be honest about it. That again, Russia would love China to put pressure on the UK-US relationship, and you say that you don't think it will, but look what Trump said to Canada. You know, if you sign a deal with China, I'm going to tariff everything that you sell to us 100%. So I don't think Trump would take this lying down. I don't think Trump would say, oh no, you crack on and make any deals with anybody you like, because he's aware that his isolation techniques now are creating different bonds around the world. I mean, he's brought countries together that hated each other, and now they're talking to each other. You know, Ursula von der Leyen's just done the mother of all deals with India. You know, all of these things are going on. Carney now in close contact with Xi, you know, with a trade deal in the offing. So the world is setting itself up away from America, which is their own fault. I will accept that. But he's not going to take it lying down, is he?
Well, I think it's the approach, right, that the Prime Minister takes when it comes to that. I think perhaps other world leaders have been more confrontational, or they've made it a point that I'm doing this X because you've done Y. The Prime Minister said it out yesterday, actually, in his interviews, that it's not him choosing between the United States and China.
He might have to.
No, I know that sounds like a fudge. Well, I mean, it's one. I'll put it this way. I did write on this actually in the last week or two. It is one of the potential scenarios, is that the United Kingdom becomes closer and closer,
to China.
Almost to use the European Union language, in ever closer union with the United States. That's a potential, because, you know, our two countries, whether it's intelligence services, whether it's cultural references, language, the sheer the investment that America and the UK have bilaterally completely dwarfs that we have with, for example, with China, completely dwarfs it. So there is the potential that the UK, if you think, and if people listening to this, if they think that we actually have to make a choice, that we can't fudge it in the great British tradition of fudging absolutely everything, if we have to make a hard choice, then perhaps the United States is one of the potential outcomes and scenarios of that. You know, I've talked about the UK becoming a deputy to the US's new form of empire or imperial.
I don't want to be anybody's deputy. Particularly not Trump's.
But this isn't me saying that this is what I want necessarily. But I just think how interdependent we are with the United States, and it's funny. Like, with the US says that, you know, you shouldn't be building this embassy in central London, but then go and look at the size of the American embassy here.
Yeah.
Go and look at Beijing, at the size of the American embassy in Beijing. It's a skyscraper. It's higher than most of the buildings here in Canary Wharf. And it has a moat and a river around it. And likewise, the Chinese embassy in Washington. So it's a bit like do as I say, not as I do.
Well, this is going to be fascinating, and we'll know more about what Keir Starmer is prepared to, I don't know, forgive, fudge, give up, whatever, tomorrow. But for now, Mark, thank you very much
so much,
indeed.
Petrie. Thank you.
Mark Logan there, former MP and Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary China Group.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And of course, at midnight, it is Talk Back, which is your chance to do exactly that. Talk back. And I want to know if you've lost faith in vaccines and why you've lost faith in vaccines. Are you one of those people who just thinks, oh no, they're trying to, you know, it's all too, I don't know enough about it, or they make me ill, or any of those questions, any of those things that you've got. I'd love to hear from you on that. Or if you are a great believer in vaccines, I want to hear from you on that as well. And the reason I'm talking about this is because of the vaccine uptake in the UK has experienced a general long-term decline over the past decade. So we're fewer and fewer of us are becoming vaccinated. And do you know the area that is the worst in the UK for not taking up vaccines? This really surprised me, actually. London. London is the area least likely to take a vaccine when offered, which I thought was really interesting because I don't understand why. And maybe it's because there's a lot of sort of, you know, carrot munching, top not wearing, posh people who think that it doesn't apply to them, like, oh, my little darling's not going to be vaccinated. They will let the other children do that for that herd immunity thing. I don't know what it is. I mean, it must be something like that. This sort of, you know, so-called intellectual elite deciding that vaccines somehow now have become dangerous after decades and decades and decades and decades of use of possibly the greatest invention by human beings in order to save human beings' lives. So I'm just really interested as to why, if you've decided that you don't want vaccines anymore, why have you decided that? I mean, I'm genuinely fascinated by this. I think a lot of this vaccine decline probably happened around COVID as well, because a lot of people got very suspicious of the COVID vaccine and how it suddenly was made, you know, available so quickly, and it must be dangerous. Or some people thought it had a microchip in it, and we were all being chipped and followed. And other people, I spoke to one of the dog walkers in the park who said, I'm never going to have that vaccine because I've been told that it's about making black men sterile. So there's a lot of rumours, a lot of misinformation about vaccines out there. But I'd love to hear your reasons for not having a vaccine. Maybe you had one and it went wrong for you, or you felt ill and you thought, no, I'm not trusting that anymore. Or are you quite happy to have a vaccine? I am. quite happy. I'll take anything. Inject me with anything you want, particularly. Well, nearly. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening. It is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. And as I was just talking about before the break there has been a real decline, in long-term decline in a decade of people taking up vaccines. And the UK has just today lost its measles elimination status, the World Health Organization has announced. As more cases are on the rise, the UK now has lost this measles-free status. The World Health Organization downgraded Britain after an outbreak that was recorded in 2024 with more than 3,600 suspected cases. It was the worst outbreak in almost a decade. A vaccination uptake was down below the required 95% threshold to achieve herd immunity. So why is this happening? Why have people lost faith in vaccines? Joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Lucy Hooper, a GP and preventative health expert at Coyne Medical. Doctor, thank you very much indeed for joining me. It's endlessly fascinating to me that it seems to be in the West that people are turning their back on vaccines, whereas in other countries, I was saying earlier, that mothers would walk for days to get a vaccine for their child. What has happened? Have we become too cosy, too cocky about it all?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And that's often a story I tell in clinic as well, actually, saying how fortunate we are and how far people go around the world to vaccinate their babies. We have become complacent, I think. So the news today was about measles, and that was definitely one we've become complacent about. We've forgotten just what a serious virus measles is and how sick it can make children and how it can have long-term consequences and even be fatal for some children. And that means that we're not as worried about these conditions and we don't feel that urge to protect and vaccinate our children.
I guess because of herd immunity as well, we haven't been used to seeing it. It's kind of like polio and things like that, right? Because we don't see it anymore. We don't see it as a threat anymore.
Exactly. And, you know, it's not just patients, doctors as well. We've forgotten about it in some ways, and that we are not as familiar with it as we used to be in terms of seeing cases. And it's not in our memory bank. You know, we don't have a family member that might have been infected, or an aunt or a grandparent perhaps that, you know, is then passed on that generational memory of this is something to be aware of and something that you should protect your children against.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly remember at my school there was a girl there who had polio. and we were aware of her having had polio because it disabled her. Not to a massive degree. She was brilliant, but you know, but still, that is in living memory. So when my own child, you know, you take the sugar lump, isn't it, or something like that? I can't remember which one is.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But yeah. Then that, you know, I was bang on. You have that. But I do remember my boy was born in '97, and that was about the time that the Wakefield study came out. This that's been debunked with the MMR.
Yes.
And by then he'd already had his first MMR. But it was right in the middle of I think it was '98, wasn't it? His study came out, so it was It was. So it was '97. So he had his first MMR, and then the study came out in '98, and then I decided to do single vaccines after that because I didn't know that there would be no real research had been done at that point to debunk Andrew Wakefield. But do you think that study has had such an impact on not just the measles vaccines, but vaccines in general?
I think it was definitely the start of a movement of people questioning the research and the safety around vaccines. I mean, it definitely had a real impact for years on vaccination rates and was the start of that. And then I think in more recent years, as you said at the beginning, then we've had the COVID pandemic and COVID-19 vaccination worries. And that's, you know, that's really spiraled and compounded on that.
But it is, if people lose trust in vaccines, though, when you see that, you know, because flu mutates, you've got to have that every year. I've just been offered shingles and pneumonia. Not because I'm old enough, I just want to point that out, but because I've got a health condition. But it is, just in case we go, gosh, she's old. So, you know, all of those things. I probably won't have flu this year because it's already probably I'm going to forgo that, but I'll have it next year. But it is if people start losing faith in it, then where does that leave us?
Exactly. You know, measles is the current issue, but it's not the only condition we vaccinate against. And will we start seeing more of these other conditions? We already did have some worries about polio last year when it was detected in wastewater, and there was a campaign to give extra polio vaccine doses to children as well. So it's measles is not the end. It won't be the last disease that we see coming back if we really have that massive downtick in vaccination rates.
And why, again, I was pondering as to why London seems to be the worst at the uptake of vaccines. Is it a multicultural issue? Is it like I said, the posh knit their own underwear out of yogurt type people who are saying, I'm not giving my child a vaccine? You know, what is it that puts London into that quite bizarre position?
I think, you know, you've highlighted a probably classic image that people think of when they think about people refusing MMR vaccine. But actually, it's often much more complicated in real life. I have to say, every parent I've ever talked to has clearly been really concerned and caring for their child about the vaccine and the decision. And in London, there's loads of other social factors that are at play. So things like maybe people have moved location, maybe their vaccination records aren't complete, especially families coming from abroad. Perhaps they really struggle to get a scheduled appointment for a vaccination. You know, you actually have to bring your child to it. And we all know that sometimes that can be really difficult. If you're busy, you're working, maybe there's other things going on in that family, you know, sickness, ill health, mental illness, all these other things that sometimes the family's kind of focus is not necessarily on making sure their children have got all their vaccinations up to date.
There's also a lot of myths around vaccines, isn't it? Them saying, you know, oh, you shouldn't overwhelm your child's immune system with too many vaccines in one go. And I was reading some notes earlier on that was saying something like you can have 10,000 vaccines would not overwhelm a child's immune system, let alone 3 or 4 in one go.
Yes, it's completely safe. Our vaccine schedule that we have, where we have usually up to 4 vaccines in one go, is very safe. And our immune system is used to dealing with, a constant almost barrage of things coming at it, from our gut, from our oral cavity in the mouth, the air that we breathe. We're always getting things coming into contact with our immune system, and it's really used to dealing with all of those different products.
I mean, again, some people will say, well, yeah, but what happened with the soldiers that were going off to Iraq, and they were given all of those injections in one go, and a lot of them became ill because of it?
I think those kind of cases of the soldiers, I think, are probably much more complex, because I think there may be other factors at play there aside from vaccination. I think we can all think about other environmental exposures that they might have had. Obviously, massive psychological trauma for a lot of those people as well, and how that might impact on other illnesses down the line. So I'm not sure it's the best group to study for vaccine safety.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that people will say is the stuff that's in the vaccine, right? That there's formaldehyde. And I was shocked to learn that a pear, just eating a pear, has 13 times more formaldehyde in it than a vaccine.
That's a great statistic. I didn't know that one.
You can have that one.
That's great.
I thought that was really, really fascinating, because people say there's formaldehyde in it, there's mercury in it. In fact, none of the adult vaccines have any mercury in at all, do they now?
No, they don't now.
And none of the children's ones either, sorry. None of them have any mercury.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But people still believe there is. Why is there such misinformation out there? Because I was expecting somebody to call me to say, because of the mercury they're injecting into you, but there's none now.
I think, if you look online, there's all sorts of information out there, isn't there? And I think, like you said about the food, the pears, what we should know is that lots of these different kind of elements and metals and things like that are all around us in our environment, in our foods and things like that. So they're not necessarily something to be super anxious about because it's contained in a vaccine.
But why? I don't understand who would want to tear down a vaccine program and make people scared of having vaccines. People always go, well, the last time I had a flu vaccine, I got the flu really badly. And it's kind of like, you probably didn't actually, but it's anecdotal, isn't it? People go, oh no, well, I had the COVID vaccine and then I got this wrong with me, or I got that wrong with me. Anecdotal evidence seems to trump science.
And, our brain often is looking for links between things. We're trying to work out how the world around us works and what's happening. And you're right, those are really strong, powerful things. And, worries about vaccinations, unfortunately, things like seizures, reactions, different things happening. Obviously, these things happen sometimes for children. And if it just happens that your child has their first seizure the day after their vaccination, I think we wouldn't be human if any of us didn't understand why that parent would worry, and would be concerned. But we have to, as scientists, we have to look at the bigger group of evidence and see, is that a pattern? Is that something we see again and again, and analyze that in a more scientific way than just looking at these anecdotes?
It's a fascinating topic. Thank you very much indeed for joining me, Dr. Lucy Hooper, GP and preventative health expert at Coin Medical, on the day that we lose our measles elimination status from the WHO. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie, and just a little reminder that coming up at the top of the hour we have Amy Fisher here, former comms director for the Tories, and she'll be going through the newspapers with me, or the front pages anyway. Before that, Northern Ireland will become the first part of the UK to introduce new rules for novice drivers to reduce the number of fatalities involving young people. I'm sure we're all horribly familiar with the stories that we see where carloads of kids are killed in one crash. The graduated driver licensing reforms will be one of the most significant changes in 70 years, with rules similar to Australia, the US and the Republic of Ireland, and it's particularly aimed at 17 to 23-year-olds, but it will include all new drivers. Scientific research has shown that some key cognitive functions are still developing in young adults up to 25 and can affect their driving behaviour. So perhaps it's not their fault if they're so reckless when they get behind the wheel. Now, they're going to be made to drive on an R plate. There'll be restricted driving. They'll only be allowed to have one other person in the car at certain hours of the night. They're not going to be able to. I mean, if you remember when we first got our driver's licenses, I think I had half a dozen lessons. Took my test, passed that on the third occasion, and then I was off. That was it. Never driven on a motorway before. Never had passengers before, and I was just free to go about life as I felt like it. And in my day, of course, there wasn't the theory test either. You just did your test. Actually, it was Gary Glitter's cousin that taught me how to drive. The Gadd family, big in my area. Anyway, so the drivers will have to display R plates for 24 months after passing their test, and existing rules in Northern Ireland had already required them to display them for 12 months. But they will not be able to take their driving test for 6 months after being granted a provisional licence. That was the other thing. We could take our test the day after we got our provisional licence. So in 2024, there were 164 people killed or seriously injured on Northern Ireland's roads from crashes caused by a driver aged between 17 and 23. This age group of drivers account for 24% of fatal serious collisions, despite holding just 8% of licences. So they're absolutely over-represented. It is absolutely extraordinary. But what is going on in their brains? We know what's going to happen with the driving test, but more interestingly, what is it about young people? Or is that unfair? Is it just a lack of experience? Well, joining me to discuss this is Lucy Beresford, psychotherapist and broadcaster. Lucy, lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm really well. I'm remembering my own driving test, which, as you say, predates the theory test.
Yeah.
You get your test, and I was driving up to the north of England to university the week later on motorways on my own.
Yeah, exactly. Probably with the car overloaded and no vision in the back. I mean, my first car was a Mini where you could see the road through the floor because it was so rotten. But anyway, Lucy, is it just a lack of experience that we're seeing these young people die in the way that they do? And it's always tragic, isn't it? Because it's always 3 or 4 of them from the same village or went to the same school together or on the same holiday together, that they have these absolutely tragic and really avoidable accidents. Is it lack of experience or is it something else?
It's actually to do with brain development. There is a very interesting process that happens in adolescence, but it's now thought to continue way into our mid to even late 20s, whereby parts of the brain are developing and therefore other parts of the brain take a bit of a back seat, if you pardon the pun. And unfortunately, the bits that take the back seat are the things to do with understanding and conceptualizing risk, having a sort of sense of your own boundaries. We call it the CEO function. It's the prefrontal cortex, and it's the CEO functioning of the brain that in effect acts like a bit of a parent. And because that part of the brain is weaker, really, during those crucial years of decision making, of taking your driving test, deciding whether to get married, whether to have sex, who to vote for, whether to join the army. I mean, there are all these decisions that we're putting on young people when their brain actually can't really process it. And coupled with that, the bit that is developing is the part of the brain that is very sensitive to emotion, and it's very sensitive to peer pressure, which is why, as you said in your talk up, we often hear about these situations where there is a whole carload of people. Only one person can drive. There are 6 other people in the back, and they could be egging the driver on, go a little bit faster, take that corner, overtake here. And because we're so sensitive at that time of our brain development to want to have peer approval, we often end up doing things that the grown-ups think, well, that's just really risky, that's crazy behavior. But the adolescent brain doesn't see it through that lens. And that's unfortunately why so many adolescents end up doing things that grown-ups think are incredibly risky.
I mean, I'm certainly at the brain development age now when I need to concentrate, I turn the radio down. That's what I do now. It's just, I don't know why, but it's just like, oh no, I need to think. So everything goes off and everybody's quiet, and you know, and I have to concentrate on that. So I mean, I suppose it starts to reverse as you get older. But with young people though, although there's that peer pressure that you talk about, and that. You know, with other kids in the car, and I certainly remember my boyfriend having a car before I did, and we'd been packed in there with our mates playing music and standing up outside the sunroof, right? I mean, we were no seatbelts or all that kind of behaviour.
It's such a rebel.
I know, but it seems ridiculous now, doesn't it? Because you wouldn't even dream of it now. But it is. Is it just that they want peer approval? I'm just trying to get my head around, because everything just feels like fun, doesn't it? It just feels like it's an adventure and nothing bad can happen to me.
Well, the brain has to develop like that in order for the species of the human race to push through and do exciting things and daring things and suddenly decide to take a career in science or a career in sport or a career in art that may seem quite idiosyncratic or reckless. But that's the way that changes occur and new ideas and new thinking are evolved. So it's really important that the human race has these young people who've got the energy, they've got the drive. Yeah. And they've got the brain development that says, I'm not going to worry about the mortgage. I'm not going to worry about having an income. I just want to pursue this. Yeah. I want to go bungee jumping. I want to experiment. I want to see the world. I want to make changes. I don't like how the world is. This is why, whatever one might think about Greta Thunberg, she does what she does because she's of an age to do it. Whereas the grown-ups think, well, this is just, yeah, you're mad to give up your schooling to highlight climate change. But that's what the adolescent brain does. It says, let's change the world. But of course, the other thing that you've referenced at the other end of the spectrum, which is where you and I are in terms of our brain development, which undergoing changes which are largely driven by hormonal changes. Adolescents, of course, they've got that in the picture as well. So in addition to being, one might say, I was going to say putting the handbrake on, all these amazing car puns that I'm coming up with. In addition to that, they've also got the stress and the anxiety and the hormonal mood fluctuations. So you might, as anyone who's either been a teenager or is currently raising teenagers will know, there's a huge amount of volatility that happens. And you could be one day this really careful, thoughtful, cautious driver, and the next day something happens and you just feel a bit more wild and a bit more carefree and you drive in a very different way. And it's that volatility that also the brain fluctuations are not helping.
Is there anything that parents can do to mitigate the risk-taking of their teenagers? I mean, you know, there will be parents listening now who perhaps if their child has just got their driver's license and saving up for their first car or whatever, or driving their car. Is there any way to mitigate it, or is it just an accepted behavioural trait of teenagers?
It is. There are definitely ways in which you can establish a rapport with your children so that they do trust you. But part of the process of adolescence is to naturally and healthily separate from your parents, and to think that everything they say is old-fashioned and
mine did.
That actually you know they don't need to listen to you, because there are much more exciting people to listen to. They could be celebrities, they could be people in their social circle. So it's natural to actually discount everything that your parents say. So sometimes you have to do reverse psychology and almost say the opposite of what it is that you mean. But being serious for a moment, it is very important that your children know that you're only saying some of this because you really want to protect them. I personally have spoken out a lot about raising the age of a lot of these milestones: taking your driving test, having sex for the first time, getting married, voting. I just think everything should be raised to 18 or 19. And that way you're creating this extra buffer to allow all of that kind of hormonal and brain development to kick in and be a bit more stable than it would otherwise be at, say, 16 or 17. But the key thing is always communicate with your kids. Talk to them even when they don't want to talk to you, because that way they can start to trust you a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I mine at 15, I thought that was the end of the world, but by the time he got to about 18, he was lovely again. But 15, I wouldn't go back there for anything. Lucy, lovely to see you. See you soon. Take care. Lucy Beresford there, a psychotherapist and a broadcaster. Well, the new drivers in France apparently face a 2 or 3 year probationary period with stricter rules, including lower speed limits. Yeah, maybe we do need something like that here on the mainland, as we would say. Right, stay where you are, because coming up we have Amy Fisher, who's the former director of comms for the Tory party, and she'll be here to go through the front pages for you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello Hello there, good evening. This is Petrie and I'm with you through until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, of course, it is your chance to talk back. And I want to ask you about vaccination. Have you lost faith in vaccines? And if you have, why and when? Because I have a feeling that it's all tied in. Recent declines are all tied in with the COVID vaccine, and people lost a lot of faith because they said it was put together too quickly, it wasn't tested, and none of that, by the way, is true. I mean, the reason it was very quick to come to the marketplace, if you like, is because coronavirus is a cold. Basically, it was just a different variant on that coronavirus. So they already had a skeleton, if you like, on which to build the rest of the flesh of the vaccine. Also, and buildings and labs with thousands of brilliant scientists working on one thing only, and sharing that information. That has never happened before, and that's why they were able to put it together so quickly. So a lot of people go, oh no, I don't trust it because it's just too quick. It wasn't really, because if you added up all those hours and spread it out across what would be the normal course of events of putting together a vaccine, it would have been years and years and years. So, and also they knew how it was going to respond, because of the coronavirus being a cold virus, basically. It was just a variant on that. So there's a lot of misinformation out there about vaccines. I'd just be interested to hear why you don't trust them anymore. Because today we lost our measles elimination status from the World Health Organization. Now, it's a complete lie that we were completely measles free. You're never, it doesn't just go away, right? This might be one person that comes in with measles on a holiday or whatever. You can't say that there is no measles. But what was happening was that there was enough people vaccinated against measles that it didn't spread. So it didn't go anywhere, if you like. If 95% of the population are vaccinated against something, it's not going to go very far. Which is why, when the COVID vaccine came out, everybody wanted the COVID vaccine, because it then meant that we could stop it in its tracks. And that's what pretty much happened, right? So just losing that status, though, is gutting. It's a real shame, because children were prevented from going blind, or worse, dying from measles. 3,600 case outbreak in 2024. And the more people get it, the more it spreads, the fewer people vaccinated, and on it goes, and on it goes. And I don't know why we would be happy with that. If you're offered a vaccination, do you take it? Do you have it? Now, before I take a vaccine, before I have a vaccine, I will go and check with my neurologist to make sure that the drugs that I'm taking won't be counter-interacting, blah, 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 with the vaccine. So I always ask first, but then if they say yes, I'm like, yeah, shoot me up, baby. I'm there. Have it. Why not? I don't want shingles. I don't want pneumonia. So one jab protects you for the rest of your life from pneumonia. Why wouldn't you? But maybe you wouldn't, and maybe it's because you don't trust them. And if you don't trust them, why don't you trust them? Or would you just not give them to your children? And why is that? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you straight back, and you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, with me to discuss that and the newspapers for tomorrow is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Tory Party. Hello.
Hello there. Very nice to see you again.
Very nice seeing you again. What do you make of that? I think it's gutting that we've lost this status from the WHO, and you know, the uptake in the UK, it's been a general long-term decline in vaccines.
Yes, no, it's really sad, and as you say, when it's about something which is totally preventable, and we're not just talking about, you know, a cough, a cold, or sniffle. As you say, measles, you know, can cause blindness.
Lifelong issues.
And with the incredibly high temperatures you get with it as well, can cause other long-term sort of neurological issues for any child that gets it. The one thing I was going to say, sort of as a corollary to everything that you've just set out there, is I myself never had the MMR jab sort of back in the 80s, because there was a history of epilepsy at some point in the family, so it was sort of thought not quite safe. And then, you know, as a kid I had all the sort of usual illnesses, and actually then had mumps and rubella, but I've never had measles. So when we had the sort of first initial losing of our kind of health organisation status, I think the first time was actually in 2022. There was an outbreak then we kind of got it back again, and now we've just lost it subsequently. I tried very, very hard as an adult to try and find somewhere, and obviously, you know, willing to pay and all the rest of it, trying to find somewhere as an adult to have a single measles jab, because, you know, it was my decision at this point, as I say, I'd rather sort of take, you know, whatever potential side effects there may or may not be. I'd rather do that than run the risk of, even as an adult, getting measles, which can be incredibly painful, incredibly debilitating. And I just couldn't find anywhere, quite literally, for love nor money. So I think, certainly, as you've laid out, there has been this drop-off in confidence or willingness of parents allowing, because it is allowing, right? Every kid is offered the opportunity to get jabbed, and there's been the drop-off in that. But as I say, at the other end, when I, as an adult, have tried to seek out a particular measles vaccination myself, I literally couldn't do it. So it seems like we're sort of boxing our, you know, we UK PLC have weirdly managed to box ourselves into the worst of all worlds, where at one end of the scale, you know, parents looking at their children's health, for some reason deciding to err on the side of not having the vaccine, and yet at the other end, where we have, you know, adults, as I say, speaking from personal experience, can't find it either.
As a single jab, because you can get the adult MMR.
But again, I still don't quite want to have that, and I don't need it, because I've had mumps and rubella now, so I quite literally don't need the whole MMR thing, MMR jab. You know, like, I slightly hope with this, as you know, as quickly as it sort of seemed to have dropped off in terms of the vaccinations, and we're certainly not really anywhere close to the 95% needed for the herd immunity. I'm sort of slightly hoping that it's something that might reverse itself again quite quickly.
But it will only reverse itself if people have the vaccine.
Yes, indeed, and I sort of hope it will reverse itself in the sense that as we move further away from the sort of ghastliness of COVID and sort of what that did to everybody's general thinking about their health and kind of concerns, and not really, in some quarters, there not being a great deal of trust in science and medicine, which, by the way, I also agree with nonsense, because I'm very much in the camp of going to stop me getting COVID, just give me all the jabs you want.
Yeah.
You know, I think as we move further away from that and just the general scariness of it, we might go back to a norm whereby, you know, the MMR jab is just something your kids have.
I think that Andrew Wakefield should be in prison, frankly, for what he's done to people's faith in vaccines, because there will definitely be children who have died.
Yes.
Because they didn't have
the scare story.
The scare story.
Yeah.
And obviously since his report was put in the Lancet, it's been removed from the Lancet. It's been debunked. It's been absolutely proven that there is no link. I think the Danish did a study of 647,000 children and found no difference in autism. It was exactly the same level of autism in one study and the other study. It's literally a huge study. I think there's been 800 studies overall of Andrew Wakefield's findings, and not one of them has been able to corroborate it. And then, of course, it turns out that he was in the pocket of some pharma drug company that were trying to sell single vaccines.
About it, though, isn't it? When, you know, a doctor, you know, somebody who's meant to know, says something, you know, that in this case, that's how all the hair started running. So there will be children who've literally, I don't mean to sound, there will be children who've literally gone blind because of that. But then, you know, once one guy does it, it's a sort of rotten apple effect, isn't it? It makes you sort of
completely. It makes
start
you
to doubt the whole kind of
side
effects. And it's like, well, that doctor was lying essentially. So how do I then trust this other doctor over here? And it, you know, it sort of gets on a life of its own. And yeah, we then end up in this situation.
It wasn't a mistake that he made in his study.
No.
It was completely fabricated. So, and it was a very small study as well. So I don't know, the Lancet has something to answer to as well for
But again, the Lancet is, you know, the publication of medical
science.
Yeah. It's a kind of gold standard. It's not, some random sort of odd little magazine published over here, read by, misfits and weirdos. It's as you say, the gold standard. So these things, public trust in these things is terribly fragile, and that's perfect is the wrong word, but that's a sort of perfect example of how easy it is for a coach and horses to be run through trusting these things, but then obviously the wider impact on public health.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think that it shouldn't be underestimated, the damage that people like Wakefield have done. But also there's a lot of misinformation out there about mercury being used in vaccines in this country. There isn't any. There used to be. None of them have it anymore. Formaldehyde, all these things that are in there. That was the classic. The formaldehyde, there is formaldehyde in it, but if you eat a pear, you've just had 13 times the amount of formaldehyde than in a vaccine, and it wouldn't put you off eating a pear.
Yeah, quite.
So a lot of the things that are in vaccines are actually in our world anyway. But people are very, very scared. People believe there's a chip being put in their body by, I mean. But again, even if you look at the science of that and the liquid that it would need in order to do that, and all of the science doesn't stack up. It's not possible. I like
the way we even say, the science doesn't stack up.
Yes, I know.
Whereas my immediate reaction is, well, that's for the birds. I mean, if we think that Bill Gates or whoever, Elon Musk or whoever else, any of these people are meant to be, that's put a chip in us, I don't think if they had the capability to do it, I don't think they particularly needed to wait for COVID.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So I'm kind of leaving aside whether the science of it might be. It's just like, well, if there's some weird megalomaniac global billionaire tech person she wants to do it, I think they probably could anyway. Unless you're really go down the kind of rabbit hole of, well, then they created COVID to enable them to vaccinate. I'm sorry,
people.
Petrie, but then we're all in a very bad pace. It's sort of 11 o'clock tonight. So no, look, I understand. I have friends who ended up not getting the COVID vaccine. I could never understand it, and I would make quite sort of forthright arguments to them. Not least, I felt there was a personal responsibility as an individual in wider society to exactly this point, that kind of, okay, yes, as an individual you will think about your own health, but also whilst, certainly in the first year, whilst the whole world was trying to work out what on earth was going on with this, hideous virus, which was literally collapsing economies, collapsing health systems, literally killing thousands of people. For me, it wasn't quite good enough to go, oh, I'm a bit worried about a chip. It was like, well, seriously, can we just have a rational discussion about it? But so, look, I do understand how people have concerns, but I certainly think when we're talking about easily preventable diseases like measles, or in a circumstance of a global pandemic like COVID, just go ahead and get the vaccine. And even with COVID, again, okay, there probably are some questions about, not long COVID. We actually don't quite have the science, etc., about that. So look, I'm not entirely dismissing people's concerns. What I am saying is, where medical science has advanced to provide protection to you or your children, as well as, the herd immunity in your place in wider society, then yes, I'm way in the favour of, to use your words, jab me up.
Jab me up, baby. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that when my friends, my adult I haven't got any children friends, to be fair, but my friends in my circle now, they've all had their MMR for me, not for them, but
that's sort of what I mean. When you're considering your personal health, you actually, you are a member of, a family or a friendship group, or, dare I say, of society. So, yes, you do look at these things as an individual, but there are obviously wider ramifications, to it. And certainly, as I say, measles, yes, we think of as being one of those kind of childhood diseases, like kind of chicken pox and all the rest of it, but actually no, it can be terribly, terribly serious for adults, and dare I say, kill off older people as well. So you know, it's not just confined to maybe having, you know, an outbreak in a primary school and that's lost us our, you know, World Health Organization status. There are serious health issues.
There are serious health issues, and measles is something that we should want to completely eradicate as much as we can from society, because it is so dangerous. So give me a call on that. Do you trust vaccines? Are you one of those people who just doesn't trust them anymore? And if you don't trust them, why don't you trust them? I'm open to all comers, as you know. You know, we don't fall out over these things. I'd be just really, really fascinated to hear why it is that you're thinking, no, I think I'll leave the vaccines alone for now. Or maybe you're thinking that for your children as well. Do give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you, just sorting out my earpiece. For a second, there you go. Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And with me right now is Amy Fisher, who is the former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. Let's have a look at the Sun newspaper, shall we? Big story on the Sun. Hubby is a lying swindler, claims 2 former lovers. Run for the hills, Katie. This is newlywed Katie Price, who married this guy after only knowing him for a week. Apparently they'd been chatting online, but actually meeting each other was, I read somewhere it's 4 days, other people are saying it's a week. But she married him. I don't know how you get a licence that quickly, but anyway, last night she was warned to run for the hills as 2 of her latest husband's former lovers come forward. So he was branded a lying swindler who preys on women, and apparently he's up on a website for £1,000 a night. Did you see that?
946.
Oh, I saw 1,000.
So I have read quite a bit about this today. So
he's a handsome-looking dude.
Well, apparently it's all sort of heavily filtered and what not, but they're not sort of actually married. They had this kind of ceremony in Dubai, and then there's the kind of legal bit that they'd actually need to go and do. But yes, has, you know, sort of variously been described as whirlwind or car crash, depending on how you sort of see it. I mean, the thing about Katie Price is I genuinely find it so distressing to look at her, because I think she's not well. I think there's a form of this is what I mean about, I wasn't casting like aesthetic aspersions upon her. I mean, she's had so many plastic surgeries and so many tattoos, and you know, I just look, it's all fine if you want to kind of, you know, make a tweak, and I have, you know, nothing against plastic surgery or anything. It's just she's had so many, and it doesn't ever seem to stop, that I think there's just an underlying it's an indication of such an underlying dissatisfaction with herself, kind of on every level. As I said, I genuinely find it quite upsetting to look at her.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's. I think there's a great deal of sadness around Katie Price. I don't know her, and we could be completely out of order saying it. But you know, this is. I can't help but think. I don't think this is going to last forever. You know, I mean, it's just days.
Well, she's sort of desperate. I mean, she's obviously desperately searching for something.
Fourth marriage.
I think there's been a number of engagements, and I think it was not that long ago, as in a matter of
she was engaged
her latest sort of ex-fiance, as I say, you know, maybe 20 years ago when she was kind of Jordan and was tabloid fodder, and you know, she was in the jungle, and you know, there's a Peter Andre sort of romance, if you remember back that far, and you know, she sort of seemed to be doing things with a cheeky knowing wink, if you know what I mean. And 20 years on, this just seems like a much darker and sadder version of that. And I mean, she looks so sort of terribly frail as well. There's a number of elements to this which unfortunately suggest it's not going to be sort of running away into the sunset happily ever after.
I know, it is such a shame for her. But I mean, if she's genuinely happy, good luck to her. I mean, good luck to her. I mean, you've got to find your happiness where you can, and if it only lasts for a year and she's blissfully happy in that year, then.
Well, the other thing I'd sort of say is, you know, she hasn't. Again, you know, this is all from reading the tabloids or whatever. It seems like sometimes, you know, she hasn't been treated very nicely by some of her partners, and may have been taken advantage of for her money. So, you know,
and her fame.
Very bluntly put, one kind of hopes that she's sort of insulated kind of legally and financially against some people who may be looking to take advantage of her in that way.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if she has the money anymore. I mean, I know that when she has plastic surgery, it's usually paid for by a clinic or something that wants the publicity. But you know, the doctor should just say to her, no more for now. It kind of reminds me of Michael Jackson, that endless pursuit of something.
That's exactly the endless pursuit of something. You know, you don't have.
You're not happy in yourself.
20-odd, you know, whatever it is, number of now, sort of all these cosmetic, and so drastically changed, and all the tattoos as well. Again, I've got nothing against tattoos, but I just think if you're kind of changing your body that much and then overlaying it all with, you know, sort of all of this ink and, you know, just the permanent. You know, it's not kind of a nip and a tuck to give yourself a bit of a refresh. It is the permanent, drastic reinvention, or the perceived need to be permanently reinventing yourself. As I said, I find it very difficult to look at her.
Well, I mean, she completely changed, hasn't she? She doesn't look anything like. But again, like, if that's what she wants to do, and it's genuine that she loves it, then it's not for us to comment.
But she doesn't seem happy, though. That's the thing, isn't it? I think what we're both getting at is that
if it made her happy, I'd be happy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And as I said, I don't have anything against plastic surgery. I don't have anything against tattoos, but it doesn't seem to be making her happy, and therefore that's when it becomes sort of, to be observing it from the outside. That's when it becomes quite uncomfortable. And
yeah, and that's, you know, body dysmorphia, or I don't know. Right, let's have a look at the Times newspaper. Fake jobs for sale to cheat system on migrant visas. This is agents charging up to 20 grand for non-existent skilled roles at genuine firms to fool the Home Office.
I mean, I have to say, I sort of read, you know, I used to work in the Home Office as a special advisor for, it was then Amber Rudd was the Home Secretary, and I have to say, I just sort of read this with the least amount of surprise ever. Yeah. I mean, as in, look, shock, you know, Home Office doesn't have a handle on some parts of borders and, you know, immigration and visas. I mean, it is literally one of the least surprising things. I mean, you know, sort of about a third way through the article, the Home Office has issued the obligatory line of, you know, we're going to investigate this illegal activity and it will not be tolerated. Well, you know, look, come on. It's been going on.
This is the tip of the iceberg,
This is going to be the tip of the iceberg. the sort of third paragraph, the deal enables people to obtain visas by presenting sponsorship certificates issued by real Home Office approved companies. Again, that doesn't surprise me that actually stuff is literally getting rubber stamped by proper Home Office and then being used for totally legal and nefarious purposes. I mean, I really do think we've gotten to a stage now where the Home Office is just too vast an edifice. Immigration enforcement, borders and visas is such a large part of it. I think it needs to be split now into...
It has to be, surely.
Because if we remember, actually, like the Home Office used to look after everything, including, kind of prisons and magistrates and courts, and actually that got hived off into the Ministry of Justice, right? So at least, I'm not saying the Ministry of Justice sort of works perfectly, but at least, that became a separate entity. And I think we then have to look at, slicing this part out of the Home Office, because I just don't think it stands a chance of working. That's actually not me being particularly pejorative about the officials who work there. These are in many cases very hard working and smart people. It's just the tools and the sort of crumbling system with which they're trying to enforce anything, just isn't working. Hence, as I said, I read this with the least amount of surprise ever. And if this, at times, investigation has made its way to the front page. I mean, we're not talking about the thin end of the iceberg. We're talking about the thin end of the tiny bit of the iceberg that's broken off out to sea. I mean, this is
the thing, isn't it? That I don't know why we're so bad with systems and we're so bad at allowing this kind of fraud to go on. Which, everybody's focused on the
small boats,
small boats coming over. When actually, this is probably a much bigger issue.
Wholesale.
It's wholesale
fraud going on. I don't know. And look, again, as I say, when I read this with no surprise, I remember being told, as I say, when I was in the Home Office, that for certain people coming over to then actually claim asylum legally, right? So we're not talking about the sneaking in, under the small boats. We're talking about people coming here and then going through the system to claim asylum,
which costs thousands
legally. But you see, they weren't really doing it legally. They were going to certain law firms, and these law firms, obviously can't name them, but many of them are still in existence. Certain law firms would specialise in particular types of essentially fraudulent asylum claims. So if you were from Nigeria, there'd be one particular law firm that you would go to, and they would say, is it because that maybe you're no longer a Christian, because obviously Nigeria is a very Christian country, and is it because possibly you're a homosexual? Like literally nod, nod, wink, wink, come here and say that you're either being persecuted because you no longer have a Christian faith, or you're a homosexual, and that's our speciality. And it would literally be like law firms would be matched up against literally particular countries, and then the kind of tick box of well, we know how to make sure your asylum
and these law firms are known.
Yeah, known.
Why are they still allowed to operate?
Well, this was the sort of mad thing about, and it was officials who were telling me this, and so yes, the question back would be, well,
why aren't you doing something about it?
What are we doing about it? And there was a slight sort of, it's very difficult, just because we kind of know it and feel confident telling you this. It's incredibly difficult for us to close any of these places down.
It's so depressing.
It's so depressing, as I say, and that was from my experience in the Home Office, 10 years ago. So the fact that this kind of,
is still going, and is now
some form
industrial
scale, widespread, is sadly not surprising at all.
And I expect they'll get 3 months each at a detention somewhere, or this is the other problem, isn't it? What's to stop them? And if these three people go down, there's
somebody
hundreds
else to
to
take their
replace them.
place. Yes, exactly. It's the snakehead thing. You sort of can't.
Yeah.
But to come back to the actual policy point, this is why I think there needs to be a separate immigration department, because also to a certain extent, whatever hue of the government, the Home Secretary's job is an incredibly difficult one. So to sort of be saying to somebody, you're by the way responsible for a terrorist attack, which sort of might happen at any particular moment, and by the way, you have this both chronic and acute problem going on over here. Like, it just all doesn't make any sense to put all of that, either politically or policy-wise, on one
I completely
person.
agree. It should be. I mean, and like you said, immigration now is such a hot topic and such a big topic that it does need its own department now. And maybe if we had our own department
and
dealing with that, they could deal with people like that.
For it.
Yeah, exactly.
To sort of bring a level of accountability in the way that, to the Home Secretary, that there just isn't.
The brief is just too big, isn't it?
The brief is just too vast and too, it's crime, it's terrorism, countering extremism, violence against women and girls, drugs policy. I mean, it's just
huge.
It's absolutely vast, and this would be one clear area which can be sort of hived off and needs to be because of its intricacies.
Yeah, and like I said, if we had a whole department constantly just looking at these fake jobs and fake visas and everything, maybe we could get on top of it, but not at the moment. It just seems like it's a free-for-all, doesn't it? Let's take a break, and Amy and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me, Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Tory Party. Just before we move on from the Times, I'm not dead yet. Rayner Eyes return to Cabinet. This story pops up a fair bit, actually. And I think last time we spoke about it, we said that she hasn't spent long enough on the naughty step. Yeah, she
hasn't. And also, next to the story, it's beside on the sort of fake jobs and migrant abuse system. Again, I read this with the least surprise ever. I mean, she sort of gave this speech at the beginning of the week about, we need to be unapologetically with Labour. This particular story on the front of the Times is about some sort of remarks she's made at private remarks at sort of fundraising, good dinner, and yeah, Angela Rayner, New Year. Presumably she has a sort of nice jaunty new suit and is on the march and not being too shy about the fact that she's nipping.
She wants back on the front benches.
She wants back on the front bench and in the top job, preferably.
Yeah.
And
well, that brings me to the Andy Burnham thing, actually. I mean, although of course it's old news now, but I did want to talk to you about it as former Director of Comms. I mean, I've never known anybody like it. He must practice punching himself in the face, Keir Starmer, because this actually looks really weak.
And it was so foreseeably weak.
I know.
So I just I sort of, because obviously the decision was made by the sort of National Labour executive,
but he had the casting vote, didn't he?
Yes, and sort of made on the Sunday. But the whole of any newspaper, any political whatever channel that you tuned into for the sort of previous, I'm going to say 72 hours beforehand, was literally saying, oh, there'll be an uproar, he'll look so weak if he blocks Andy Burnham.
I know,
and
he
then,
was warned.
And then he blocks him and sort of seems, and it's described as being done and dusted. And it's sort of like, you kind of want someone to take in, it's like, mate, you do realise this is what everybody was warning you about, and you do realise that sort of 50 of your MPs have signed a letter saying they're very upset with you, and you do realise you've literally got people going on the airways saying, you know, there'll be a contest by July. And I'm not saying your life would have been easy or easier had you let it go ahead, but it would have been more avoidable than this.
Yeah, and it would have been braver, actually.
And also, you know, what's the whole phrase about it's better to have people, you know, pissing out the than pissing in.
Yeah.
And, you know, so look, Andy Burnham probably would have... I probably would have won.
They would have been. Basically, he's just getting himself in line for when the local elections happen and Keir Starmer collapses off the face of the planet. I mean, that's what they wanted to do, is get Burnham
but it doesn't
lined up. And he could have done both jobs. The argument that Keir Starmer made... It would have been
too expensive to have the...
they didn't need to.
The mayoral, mayoral thing. But also, it hasn't actually even solved the problem.
No.
Like, there'll just be another seat that will come up either through, you know, events or sort of machinations. So he hasn't even, it's just, as you say, it's inflicting more pain, totally avoidable pain upon pain, whilst not actually solving.
No.
You know, this wasn't ripping the plaster off for like an end game. This was literally like
advising him. Just honestly, I would have said, look, this is not good because he's more popular than you, right, mate? But if you don't allow him to challenge you...
But this hasn't stopped him being more popular.
No, it's made him even more popular.
Yes, this is what I mean.
And Keir Starmer even less popular. But you know, I'd have said, look, you're going to have to let him challenge you and just may the best man win, because otherwise you're just going to look pathetic.
At this stage in your premiership, to have... OK, there are a couple of the more obscure Labour MPs, you know, they're not sort of what one would describe as big Bs, but to have people openly saying he'll be out by July...
I know.
At this point into your new government, it's just so very, very painful. And you sort of wonder whether he's, you know... OK, look, I'm going to admit it. When I was a special advisor, sometimes when there was just such bad news and the person I was advising, you know, had like a really big speech or something, you know, a big statement in Parliament or something, you know, I would make a strategic and tactical decision. I'm just not going to mention it right now, right? They don't need to know that they've been absolutely, you know, torn apart by whichever sketch writer because of whichever, you know, mistake has been made. And I would sort of tactically make that decision, and then at a sort of quieter point, or, you know, in a more sort of rounded way, kind of bring up, look, this is, you know, this is probably something we need to look at, Secretary of State. But people in number 10, and I do that for maybe like 6 hours, as I say, when like the big thing that the Secretary of State needs to focus on that day, when that was sort of out the way, and then, you know, the back end over a glass of wine, I broached something if it was sensitive. People in number 10 seem to have been applying this to Keir Starmer for about the last 6 months.
I know.
Like we're just not going to...
Don't tell him anything.
Yeah, we're just going to we're not going to mention this like horrific thing that's going to happen that was entirely foreseeable, because maybe if we just don't talk about it, it somehow won't be real.
It's just
and as
bizarre.
I say, you can do that maybe on like a daily basis, like, you know, put the short-term goal that your Secretary of State, your sort of principal has to deal with, but you don't hide it from them. You don't hide it from them infinitum, which does sort of seem to be the tactic that, like, bafflingly, the number 10 team
I find it really extraordinary.
Because as I say, there's this comment from Starmer that, oh no, the Gorton and Dent thing, you know, it's done and dusted now, I don't want to talk about it more. It's like, well, but it isn't.
It isn't. No. And they will lose that seat, and how embarrassing for that, because Andy Burnham would have held it and get the mayoral.
Will still come back being even more popular.
And actually now, because he only found out from media, Nobody told him beforehand.
That's appalling,
isn't it? That's really bad management.
That's appalling people management. And as I say, again, so avoidable. It wouldn't have made Andy Burnham any less personally annoyed, and it certainly wouldn't have quieted the Labour backbenchers. But just as a point of principle and courtesy, put the phone call in before briefing the press.
Yeah, and trying to look like the strong man. And I did enjoy Beth Rigby's interview of him over that as well. She was brutal, and she was going, "Come on, Prime Minister, come on, Prime Minister. You know that's not true. You know." And it was very good. Right, the Telegraph, Starmer-led witch hunt against Iraq veterans. PM's human rights case opened door to hundreds of soldiers being persecuted. Another punch in the face for himself. Sir Keir Starmer led a legal case that opened the door to hundreds of British soldiers being pursued for alleged war crimes.
I mean, this is just awful at every level, not least because the Labour government is actually trying to sort out what it's going to do with its sort of protection for veterans bill, which is winding its way through various bits of Parliament because they can't quite get it right. I mean, for me, the sort of most damning bit is in paragraph 2 of this article on the front of the Telegraph, which talks about basically the Prime Minister being in sort of cahoots with Phil Shiner. Do we remember him? He was this very much in the bracket of kind of ambulance chasing.
Oh yes, no, I do remember.
The guy with the sort of coloured round glasses. I mean, would hoist his petard about fighting the evil government for all of these kind of abuse of the armed forces, willy-nilly going out and sort of shooting people in Northern Ireland. And look, and actually he also led a number of cases against what armed forces had done in kind of Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, I remember.
As well. Yeah, the guy was firmly struck off.
Yeah.
I mean, literally struck off by his own body for being an absolute, shyster probably isn't sort of strong enough a word to cover it. So the idea that Keir Starmer had sort of thrown his lot in with him is, as I say, one of the most damaging bits of the article. I mean, it's also really running into, very directly, the threat from reform, because if we remember, it was yesterday that when Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, was defecting to reform, she did it at a rally for, veterans, and so Nigel Farage has made a big platform about, actually reform, we're really on the side of armed forces who have sacrificed so much in defence of the country, which only reform love. So on many levels, this story, well, I don't know, I should imagine this is going to fall into the bracket of one of the ages going, well, let's just not show Keir the Telegraph today.
He's on his way to China at the moment to suck
up exactly.
to
Let's
Xi,
just pretend, let's just pretend that sort of Wednesday's front page of the Telegraph didn't happen.
It didn't happen. La 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 la. Sir Keir Starmer has defended his trip to China, the first by Prime Minister in 8 years, saying it will make Britain richer. And we will be safer and richer with China's help. He says the golden age to the ice age, blah, blah, blah. And insisted now is the time for diplomatic thaw. Keir Starmer argued the trip would help put more money in people's pockets and keep the nation safer. I don't know how it's going to keep us safer.
Well, no, quite. I mean, look,
they're not part of NATO.
I would understand the sort of line of we can't afford to ignore China. I mean, obviously we sort of can't with the global power that they are. But none of this messaging coming out of Number 10 about this trip seems to give any due weight to the fact that China's still basically a bit of an enemy of ours. Okay, yes, they have just had the planning permission for their new kind of super embassy to be going up to the Tower of London, and yes, everybody keeps trying to reassure us that's fine, because as far as the logic goes, all of their spies will be in one place now, so it'd be easier to keep an eye on them. I mean, I paraphrased, but I don't think what Kieran Martin was saying was actually too far away from that.
I will be watching this very, very closely, because this is where Keir Starmer cannot ride two horses. In China with Xi has propped up the Russian regime.
Yes.
And the Russian economy, the country would have collapsed by now during this Ukraine war if it weren't for China purchasing their oil, giving them money, giving them intelligence, giving them weapons plans, all of these things. There's no way that Russia would be where they are without China. So how can Keir Starmer cozy up to Xi when he's supposed to be supporting Ukraine?
Well, this is the sort of key paragraph in that story on the front page of the Telegraph, penultimate one. So Keir is expected to raise human rights concerns. Well, what are they going to be? I mean, we haven't even mentioned Taiwan here.
Exactly. So we're going to stop them from attacking Taiwan?
Yeah, so is that going to be a terribly polite Keir Starmer saying, by the way,
you must stop with those
some of what you're doing? But no, so I don't think... I mean, also, again, you're sort of punching himself in the face. Obviously, the trip is sort of fueling internal Labour divisions because, you know, Rachel Reeves is apparently very upset that she hasn't been included in this trip, and so therefore is, you know, that a sort of sign that she's being
sidelined,
sort of shunted off.
It's a boys' club. I don't know. I'm going to be watching that very closely because we cannot sell our soul just for a trade deal.
No,
and actually, Trump will punish us anyway, as he's tried to punish the Canadians with 100% tariffs if they sign a deal with China. Trump will not lie down and take this. Quick break, but we'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications for the Tory party. The Mirror, Amy, Labour pub rescue fallout. This is, again, has backfired.
Well, it has, and I'm assuming that's why even the Mirror has sort of put rescue in sort of the slight kind of commas. Look, it's another U-turn. How many are we on now? I think it's about 13, 14, you know, be it about farms or winter fuel allowance or, you know, more money for doctors. This is now about the budget, which is going to absolutely hammer pubs. So, now actually the Chancellor has said there'll be a 15% discount on business rates from April, but it's only for about 2 years. It actually doesn't apply to kind of all hospitality venues, and it seems like rather thin gruel. So I mean, again, it's literally exactly like the fuel allowance, where sort of even when they reversed on it, they didn't sort of reverse quite enough the first time to make any of the heat go out of the situation. No. So this is the same, whereby, you know, giving this kind of 15% discount on rate is simultaneously
after having put them up.
Yes, it's simultaneously admitting yes, we got it wrong, but actually not doing enough to kind of correct the situation.
Yes, exactly.
So everybody's just is still as angry without them having taken any heat out of the situation. I mean, if we remember, I mean, this was so unpopular that sort of a large majority of Labour MPs, including the Chancellor, were banned from their local boozer. But, you know, look, I think I saw a figure somewhere that actually to the average pub it would be worth about £1,600 a year in sort of remittance. Well, that's not a lot of money if you're thinking about, you know, what it costs to keep a pub going, you know, staff costs, you know, national insurance, all the rest of it. So this is just another punch to their own face, and certainly for Rachel Reeves, I mean, she can't do, what's the phrase? She can't do right for doing wrong, or you know, every way she sort of turns, she's
well, like the headline says, half measures. Half
measures, exactly. So that's still quite sad news for the sort of pub and hospitality industry. And actually, I particularly worry about this because I don't know. You know, my first job was basically sort of waitressing, and I variously.
Absolutely, it's so
important.
As a
student, I worked in a pub and this kind of thing. So, you know, there's this whole thing about, you know, young people, you know, having really struggled through, you know, sort of COVID and all the rest of it. And if their chances of kind of, you know, getting a kind of weekend job or as a student, you know, hospitality is kind of the first where a lot of people get there first. You know, that's your first experience of basically having to work for money if you want to buy stuff, right?
Yeah, and learning to talk to people and learning, you know, all of
this kind of thing. And you just sort of worry with the rate at which pubs are closing anyway.
Yeah. It's very sad.
With the knock-on effect of this, it's, you know, the ramifications are far wider than just, oh, my local might be under threat. Yeah. There's a sort of societal point to it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's such an important. The whole hospitality industry is so incredibly important to this country in terms of GDP as well.
Yes, exactly.
Right, let's have a look at the Daily Express. Kel Total farce. 350 migrants arrive, but only 281 leave under Starmer's French deal disaster. Keir Starmer's flagship migrant policy was called a total farce, as Shabana Mahmood admitted Labour had taken in more people from France than it had sent back.
I mean, this is crazy. I mean, this was always going to be the kind of weeping sore in Labour's side. They didn't really have a plan. Their plan was basically a slogan of smash the gangs, right? But that's not a plan. I mean, it's barely even a slogan, actually. And then I think it was within the first week of the operation of this deal, one in, one out, that he, you know, triumphantly said had been agreed with the French. You know, the first chap that they tried to deport came back.
Yeah.
So, and you know, having now been in government for somewhat 14, 15, they don't seem to be any further.
But why isn't somebody doing the maths? I mean, one in, one out is not a particularly difficult sum.
But they don't seem to be any further along in any of their thinking of any practical means to get these people out. And also, you know, if they caught these yesterday, I think the government's now being basically sued by Rwanda.
Yes, it is, for 50 million.
For the scrapping of...
That's Suella Braverman's...
previously been the plan there. So, you know, look, Daily Express also firmly going in the pile of let's just not tell the Prime Minister
let's not talk about this.
Let's not mention this one. No, but seriously, they don't seem to be any further along in having any sort of
plan. No.
And
people are getting frustrated about it, and quite rightly so. The Independent's got an interesting front page. It's a campaign that they're running. It's live. New lifeline for 72,000 children missing every year. The Keir Starmer praises a vital new safe call service, but which has been launched by Missing People charity. But if you thought it was that good, why didn't the government set it up? Thanks to generous support from you that reaches the young people who vanish every day.
Yeah, well, I mean, that stat was
Shocking.
72,000 children every year. I stopped cold at that. I had I had no idea it was that quantum at all. So yes, hopefully this can be only a good thing for those thousands of.
But it is, you know, Keir Starmer says, oh, it's a vital new service, but not vital enough for government investment. That's just sickening to me. The Financial Times, this was quite a big story today, but not as big as it first sounds. Property investors bristle at a £250 cap on ground rents paid by leaseholders. Now, I thought the big issue was not the ground rent necessarily, but the service charges that people are charged.
Exactly.
Maintenance.
The sort of property companies that look after sort of leasehold where it actually tends to be flats, can be absolutely astronomical. They are very rarely capped, well, they're not capped in any way whatsoever. So that's where further reports have said that, yes, alongside this 250 cap on the ground rent, that actually there should be a moratorium on the further sale of basically leasehold, because it's a mad system, right, that you can own your property, but you have no control over a lot of the costs that are being ascribed to it.
Yeah.
So if you have a leasehold property, you know, yes, there's the ground rent. Good news, it's being capped, but that's not the main one. I mean, you don't get to decide your property insurance. You don't get to decide any kind of sinking fund for long-term repairs or work, which is often where, frankly, the property companies take the proverbial, and they'll just sort of say, oh, we think each of you people, you know, within this converted block, I think each of you need to give £1,000 this year just for any potential long-term repairs that might be needed. And there's, apart from a very convoluted kind of tribunal service, there's not really a lot that you can do as a leaseholder to sort of protest or get further information
and leasehold
about that.
properties certainly in London are dropping like a stone in value because of issues like this, because people are going, well, I need share of freehold, or I need freehold. Those properties are holding.
So the last government did make it a bit easier for sort of leaseholders to get together to buy the freehold. But again, that's quite off-putting to people, because
it's quite a big deal, isn't it?
Exactly, and well, listen, somebody has to be willing to kind of look after it all.
I know, and put it into a business. That's the problem. Amy, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Very nice to see you. See you very soon. Amy Fisher, there, who is the former director of communications for the Tory Party. Stay where you are, because it's Talk Back next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good morning to you. This is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and due to the fact that yesterday the UK loses its measles elimination status, says the WHO, the World Health Organisation, after vaccination coverage plateaued and cases of measles surged. From 2021 to 2023, the country was considered to have eliminated the disease, but global health officials say measles transmission was re-established in the UK in 2024. Vaccine coverage has flatlined in recent years, with record measles infections in the UK soaring to 3,681 in 2024. Spain, Austria, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan also lost their status, and the WHO urged countries to boost vaccination rates to prevent the disease infecting more children. It's unsurprising the UK has lost its WHO measles elimination status following nationwide outbreaks since 2024 and the preventable death of a child in 2025, said Ben Kassan Dabouche, Assistant Professor of Global Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So it is really interesting to me about vaccines, because there's been a lot of talk about vaccines, so particularly over, for about 27 years now, since the MMR debacle caused by Andrew Wakefield. His study was completely and utterly debunked, but the hang-on from it has caused people to be very nervous about vaccinating their children, particularly with the MMR. A lot of people saying, it's too many injections in one go. Surely it's better to have individual vaccines. Well, actually, I was reading earlier that is absolutely not the case. That a child's ability to cope with things is a lot higher than we think. Because as babies, they're always getting colds and they're all touching things, aren't they? And they're never wrapped in cotton wool or kept completely clean all the time. So they're dealing with a lot of things all the time. So a couple of vaccines scientifically doesn't really make any difference to them in terms of being overloaded with vaccines. So there's a lot of things that have caused parents particularly to not want their children to be vaccinated, and my own son was born in 97, so he had his first MMR. It wasn't even a question, it was just that's just what happened, right? But then by the time the second MMR was due, then Andrew Wakefield's study had just come out, and I was like, I'm going to err on the side of caution because I don't know. I haven't had time to look at this. It hasn't been researched properly. Nobody has researched this properly. And so I'm going to err on the side of caution. And I gave my son individual jabs, which I had to pay for, which was fine. But that was only because the study hadn't yet been debunked. It was right in the heart of the storm. The second MMR was due to be given, so I just decided to err on the side of caution, as I say. But since then it has been debunked by hundreds of studies that have tried to replicate. Andrew Wakefield's been attached to possible funds from places that shouldn't have been anywhere, investments into drug companies, all sorts of things that he was also stripped of his title. He's not a doctor anymore, and the Lancet stripped that study out of the pages of history. So I'm just intrigued really as to, and then of course there's COVID. COVID is the other reason why so many people are distrusting of vaccines. Long COVID, people having health issues after the vaccination, or at least they believe it's after the vaccination. So there's more proof coming through that some people have been affected, but in terms of the millions, potentially billions of people around the world that had this vaccination, the numbers are incredibly small. But I just wonder if you've lost faith somewhat in the idea of having a vaccination of any kind, have you been reading about them? Are you troubled about them? Is there something that you're concerned about? You know, do you not trust them? Do you not? What is it? Why is it that we are less likely to have vaccines today than we were 20 years ago? And what is it about vaccines that you're worried about? And if it is for your children, then let me know. If it is for you, let me know why you may have stopped having vaccines. Or maybe you're like me and you're just like, well, I'm going to trust the science. I do trust scientists. I don't think they want to kill us. I don't think they want to chip us. And if they did, they'd probably find an easier way of doing it. I mean, all they've got to do is put a chip in fat jabs at the moment, isn't it? Half the world would be chipped. There are easier ways of doing it, okay? They don't have to put it into a vaccine. So where are you on vaccines? Do you think this is stupid that people worry about it? Do you think it's sensible that people worry about it? Have you done some research that you're convinced tells you not to do it? Let me know. Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Joanna has said, I was shocked when my daughter told me her friends' children haven't been vaccinated for anything. They're both very intelligent people. I was shocked. There were no vaccines for measles when I was a child born in 1960. I was 27 when I got measles and I lost 2 stone in 2 weeks. I'd never been so ill and luckily I wasn't pregnant because of possible deformities. The risk is to the next generation too, if not vaccinated. Yeah, I think that those of us who are a bit older, for a start, we met people who had been harmed in some way by these diseases. I certainly, like I was saying, at my school there was a girl who had polio, and was disabled to a certain degree by it. And so polio, when that was sort of mentioned when my son was little, I was like, yeah, but bring it on. Yeah, I don't want any of that stuff going on. And measles, we were aware of people who'd been injured by diseases, and so it kind of felt that we understood it better, and so we would have vaccinations and have our children vaccinated. Do you remember that one you had at school? What was that one? When they stuck a rose thing on it, and if it came up you had to have the vaccine, or if it didn't come up you had to have the vaccine. Can't remember which one that was. Can't remember. Anyway, yeah, we had vaccines at school. Do you remember? BCG. That was it. How do you know that? How do you remember that? You're not old enough. Ah, yeah, your brother would have heard it, not you, because you're not old enough. So yeah, the BCG. So we would just line up at school and just be jabbed. That was it. I don't think the parents had a say in it. I can't remember parents having had a say in it. It was just something that we did. So why have we stopped trusting vaccines? I suppose that's the question I'm asking. Why have you stopped trusting them? 0344 499 1000. There's one says, I've got no problem with the older vaccines. I had them all. And the same for my daughter. I distrust the new COVID vaccines. I had 2 and then a 3rd booster, which put my blood pressure up. It has settled to normal. Just had my shingles jab and the flu, but refused the next COVID. Yeah, I'm about to have the shingles jab, although I've had shingles. God, it was awful. But yeah, I'm going to, next time I go in for a blood test, I'm going to have the shingles jab. Heather is in South Ayrshire. Heather, good morning. Do you still trust vaccines?
Good morning, Petra. How are you doing?
I'm all right, my love. How are you?
I'm just eating the hot cross bun toasted.
Oh, nice. Lots of butter.
Yeah. As I was saying to your researcher, your producer, John, the reason why when I had the 4 COVID jabs and I had the 3 flu jabs, and the reason why I don't want any more jabs and needles and vaccinations because I trust my own body and I'm my own person at the end of the day. I mean, who owns our body? Is it the doctors? Is it the scientists? Or is it us? Is it our body or is it their body?
Yeah, but it's not mandated. You don't have to have it. You know, that was a big problem with the COVID vaccine, wasn't it, when they started with the COVID vaccine passports? It was kind of like, if you don't have it, then you're in trouble. And that's what people balked against. If it's a choice, a personal choice, it's still your choice to have a vaccine or not.
With the COVID vaccine, with all 4 of them, and plus I've had 2 COVID tests done on myself, and both of them came out negative, so touch wood so far.
So that's that's the vaccine's working.
I've not had COVID ever since.
So that's the vaccine working. That's a good thing, right?
Well, some people are very lucky to have very strong genes and strong immune system, and plus my oxygen level is 100% because I've had my oxygen level done, and it's 100% because I'm a diver and a free diver, and developed my own oxygen through that, and with some people have got that are lucky to have 100% of oxygen and good with their immune system, and that's how nature works. Some people are lucky, some people are not lucky.
Yeah, but I mean the thing is with a vaccine is that it is often. Well, it is better than having the disease. Now, the disease will give you better protection, but the disease also comes with negativity to it. Like, for example, COVID can cause cardiomyopathy and all those things that are worse, but the vaccine won't cause those things. So, I mean, it sounds to me like the COVID vaccines you had have worked for you. And
do you remember when you were saying about the MMR?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember way back in 80s when I was a kid. Do you remember the 6 needles where it's all in one, where they just jab it in your arm?
Was that the one I was just talking about, the BCG?
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 needles where they just jab it in your arm. I've had that. And plus I had the, do you know the sugar lump that you were saying, the polio one? I've had that as well. So, and my daughter, she's had her MMRs jabs done when she was a baby. So I made sure that my daughter was had her injections as well.
Yeah, it's just. I don't understand why people wouldn't give that to their children.
I know it's ridiculous what they're doing, playing Russian roulette with their kids' lives, with their measles. For a fact, you can actually die with it.
I know, and it's preventable. There was a death of that little girl in last year, wasn't there? And it was completely preventable. Yeah. I think it was a little girl, last year, completely preventable. You can imagine that parent is sitting there going, why didn't I just inject her? Why didn't I just give her the vaccine?
That's why we have these injections for MMR, mumps, rubella,
mumps, measles, rubella, yeah.
It's to protect the kids from having severe measles and rubella and mumps, and I remember when I was a kid I had chicken pox and I had measles when I was a kid. I'm sure everybody else had them when they were kids.
I must have had them because there wasn't a measles vaccine then.
Plus there were no chicken pox vaccines either.
No, we used to go, I mean, literally, it was the days where you were taken to the family's house that had chicken pox to play with the children to catch chicken pox, so you got it out of the way. I think that was a thing in my youth.
What call it, calamine lotion on it.
Oh, calamine lotion, yeah, that pink stuff. Do you know, I love the smell of that stuff. It must come back from my childhood. I love it. It's kind of weird, but it.
I know. There's still some calamari lotion even today.
Pink. I seem to
And
remember.
always like when you look at that in chemist, and it takes you back to the days when you were a kid. And my daughter had only mild measles, and I ended up lathering my daughter with caramel lotion. And it's one of these things when you're a parent, you've got to take responsibility.
I know, but a lot of parents are just not doing it, Heather. They believe that you know, the herd immunity will protect their child. But the trouble is, if everybody believes that herd immunity will protect their child, nobody's going to have herd immunity. That is the issue. Heather, thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to take a quick break, but I'll be back in just a moment to talk to Chris.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning. This is Talk and it's Petrie. Another message for you here. I'm one in favour of vaccines. Back in 2021, when most of the world was still in lockdown, I received an invitation to a wedding that was to take place in England. I'm in the US and I wanted to be there for the wedding. So the first chance I had, I went and got the COVID vaccine so that I could be admitted into the UK later, as it was part of the requirements, along with a negative test. In the end, I was able to attend the wedding and I would do it all again if necessary. Snakebite. I didn't know you were in the US. Oh, bless you. Thank you for listening in. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I didn't like was the idea that it had to be mandated, that in other words, you couldn't go anywhere unless you had it. And I thought that it should always have been about personal choice. And I remember I got my COVID vaccine really early, before it was released to the general public. And my best mate said, look, you should take a photograph of yourself having that and put it up on social media, because it's important that you lead the way with having vaccines and things. So I begrudgingly did that. And then I got a barrage of people attacking me. How come you jumped the head of the queue? How come you got a vaccine? Who do you know? I mean, hundreds of messages, I'm not even joking, having a go at me. And of course, I didn't want to release my personal health details, so I just took it. But I was like, think about it. Who is jumping the queue? Let me think. Those people who are compromised are jumping the queue. So why can't you put two and two together and just figure it out? But there was so much jealousy and so much anger that I was, not considered to be in the danger group by the public, and therefore I was getting my vaccine early. I mean, I must admit that when I went to queue for this vaccine, I was there with, octogenarians and people who were incredibly infirm. I was there because of my health. But it was kind of bizarre. There was so much anger and jealousy towards not having vaccines. And now we're looking at a world where we've lost our measles elimination status because people are not vaccinating their children, or they're not getting vaccinated anymore. And it's not just the measles vaccine either. These vaccine uptake in the UK has experienced a general long-term decline over the past decade. It is extraordinary to me that so many children, nearly 20% of children in England, did not receive their preschool booster jab. The MMR vaccine remains below the 95% target, quite considerably below. Vaccination coverage is consistently the lowest in London. That I don't understand. It's consistently the lowest in London, the most populated city in the country. You'd think people would be jabbing and, every 5 minutes not to catch diseases on the London Underground or even just on the high street. I don't know. Right, let's turn our attention now to Chris, who's in Thurrock. Oh, wrong fader. Hello, Chris. Good morning.
Good morning, Petrie.
So, are you a jabber or a non-jabber?
I am in favour of jabs, and I think they're very good to have. I'm not 100% sure I would be rushing to get another jab that's been put together quickly again, because I had 3 of the COVID jabs, and the first one didn't touch me at the time. The second one sent me to hospital, and the second one, my vision went bad for about a year or so, and I didn't think it was going to fully recover. They were just starting to test me for glasses, and then I just went to start to get tested for glasses. Then thankfully it recovered, and since then I've been fine. And the third one also made me very ill. So I'm not sure I'd be 100% happy with taking another one that's been put together at the last minute.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? I see. I don't, because the COVID was this mRNA style injection. It's quite it's been tested for years, but it's quite a new concept in terms of vaccines, and that is that they're basically injecting a how-to manual into your body in biological form. Right. So what it does is it's not even part of the disease. It's not even a dead part of COVID. I have to check whether a vaccine is alive or dead before I can take it. So if it's not even a dead part of COVID for your body to recognise, it's basically here's a blueprint, a biological blueprint of what COVID looks like. And then the body, this is the new mRNA style of vaccine, because I find it really, really interesting. So it's basically injecting a manual into your body to say, right, look at this. This is what COVID looks like. So when you see it, you need to attack it. And then your body's immune system then has, like it does with other diseases you might have had in the past, will recognise the COVID and go and attack it. And that's what these vaccines were about. So, and it's brilliant. I mean, you go away and read about it. It's really, how these scientists think of these things is absolutely profoundly impossible for me to think about. I can't even think how they do it. But it is a really interesting, and it's leading the way now in cancer vaccines and things like that. This mRNA, I think I'm saying the right thing. Let me just check I'm saying the right thing. But it's leading the way now in other forms of vaccines, so that because it's saying to the cancer vaccines, for example, it's also doing a similar thing, where it's saying if you see something that looks like this, it doesn't matter where it is in the body, go for it. You can attack it. You can have it. So it's quite clever, but it's interesting that you got ill with it. I'm not denying you got ill with it, but
but I wasn't the only one, was I?
No, you weren't.
A few people did.
No, you weren't. You weren't. And a lot of people say that is that has been the issue. But they're finding it very difficult to to find causation. They can find correlation, but they're not sure about causation.
Okay.
But there's definitely something in it. If you got ill after 2 of the vaccines, I would say that, you know, I would put those 2 things together and say that's what they were.
Well, the third one was a different make though, so that one didn't quite make sense to me either. Like the first 2 I had, I can't remember the names of them now, but the first 2 I had were the same one.
Right.
I only got ill on the second, but that was the bad one. Right. So I don't understand why when the first one was fine and the second one sent me to hospital and that was the bad vision one. And then the third one was a different make. I can't remember the names.
Yeah, there was Pfizer and something, I can't remember the other one. But yeah, there were 2.
One just made me ill, badly ill.
AstraZeneca.
When I got COVID itself, and I got COVID really late. I got COVID like 2022, I think it was, like really late, and that barely touched me. So
it did work.
It did, I suppose. I suppose it did. Yes, it did, I suppose. But you know a lot about it, which is great. I didn't know any of what you just said. So,
go and look it up. It's because I think you know me by now. I'm a bit of a geek, so I love to read all these studies and have a look and see this new science and technology. Just particularly when they're put together, is just absolutely mind blowing. Okay. And it's worth looking it up because this new form of vaccine. Well, it's not that new. The technology had been used. It was just it'd been used on the millions and millions of people that used it. It's the first time that it was used in those numbers, but it had been tested and tried. That the delivery system had been. But it's really changing the world of vaccine, because if you can imagine, it just has to say this is what something looks like.
Yeah.
I mean that. That is just incredible.
It was unprecedented times as well. I mean, we forget. I think some of us forget now just how,
Oh my God! When I look back,
and it weren't that long ago.
No, Chris, I think we're all in trauma over it still.
Yeah.
I definitely am. There are parts of it that I just cannot believe. I'm so angry with myself as well for sort of capitulating to the government immediately because we were all so scared. I don't think I'd do it again.
How do you mean? Sorry.
Well, I just believed everything that I was told.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes, I take your point. Yeah.
Yeah, and completely did everything that I was told to do, which is not like me, and blindly I took it, and then we find out they're all having parties. So you go.
Yes, no. I was very upset by that. Very upset. That led me away from the Conservatives. That did. But anyway, another story.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So you still have vaccines then? Are you careful as to what type, or do you ask what you're being vaccinated with?
I've not been vaccinated with anything since, but if I were to need another vaccination, I'd be all for it. But if it was another COVID situation and it had been put together at the last minute, I might be a little bit more hesitant, but you say it's not as simple as that, so that's definitely
it's definitely not as simple as that. And also, the idea that the COVID vaccine was thrown together in so quickly, everybody went, oh no, I don't trust it because it's been put together too quickly, is completely bogus as well, because the coronavirus is a cold. It's basically comes from the cold, but it mutated to become the corona, whatever number it was. But they already had the skeleton, if you like, of a COVID vaccine, because they were studying it for colds and things like that. So they were already on top of it. Yeah. They already had, it was already really close. What they had to do was change the DNA to the new variant, but they already had one for the old, stuff that we didn't need anymore. And also, it was unprecedented in every single laboratory in the world was working on one thing at the time, at one time, and they were sharing all their information, and that's why it felt like it was done so quickly. But if you actually added up the hours that it took and spread it out over a normal process, it would have been years. But because everybody was doing it at the same time, sharing the information, sending off the DNA to the COVID vaccines that they'd got, changing the DNA to the COVID vaccine that was there, then testing it, and then making sure it was fit for human consumption. They already had a vaccine that was fit for human consumption. They were literally just tweaking it.
Okay.
So it wasn't thrown together. I mean, it was put together at breakneck speed. But if you actually break it down by the hours that were worked in every lab across the world, and not working on anything else, just COVID, then it would have been probably a decade.
Okay.
So,
all right, well, fair dues. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah. I know, this is what annoyed me at the time. I was going, why isn't anybody talking about this? Why isn't anybody explaining this? That actually, it does look like it was thrown together at the last minute, but there was so much of it that was already prepared. And because they'd been working on something similar, very similar, all they had to do was switch it around a bit, get other scientists to check it, all scientists in the world doing the same thing. Never happened before. Never happened before that's happened. To find one vaccine across the world for one disease. It's extraordinary what happened.
Okay, I'm pleased I made the call, actually, because I didn't know any of that.
Well, go and look up this mNRA thing, because it's really, really, really interesting. Anyway, I'm a geek, so I find it interesting, but I'm sure you will. Chris, thank you for your call. It's lovely to talk to you. You take care of yourself. Look after yourself. Right, I've got to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Petrie here with you, and we're talking about vaccines. And Chris and everybody else, I do apologise, I knew I'd got it wrong, it felt wrong. It's mRNA. mRNA. Not whatever I said. I'm not going to say it again because I get confused. So mRNA vaccines such as the Pfizer, BioNTech and Moderna work differently than other types of vaccines, but they still trigger an immune response inside your body. Like I said, they don't have dead COVID in there. They don't have, live COVID in there. It's impossible to catch COVID from these two vaccines. As a lot of people think they get flu from the flu vaccine. But because it works in a different way. And like I said, it basically, you're injecting, for want of a better way of putting it, I mean, there's lots of fancy scientific blah blah about it, but is a manual, a picture, if you like, a biological photograph of what the germ looks like, what the bacteria or whatever it is, the virus looks like, and it gives you, it sends your immune system this photograph, if you like, of what the virus looks like, and says if you see it, respond. Then this is your response to it. They're fascinating, these jabs. Honestly, if you're the least bit interested in science, look up the mRNA vaccines and how they work and how they're changing. They are changing the world of vaccination. It's extraordinary. Right, why don't you take vaccines anymore? You know, do you not trust them? Do you not believe in them? Do you not have, you know, have you had a bad experience with them? It's hard to argue that Chris had that awful experience after his second vaccine, and it would. I'm not going to say it was nothing to do with the vaccine. I'm not a scientist, but there's often an issue with adverse effects, but it's not always clear there's causation. That it was caused by it. There's a correlation that it happened at the same time, kind of like the MMR, where people were reporting, oh, my child had the MMR jab at age 2 and then started to show signs of autism. It is, you know, that's not necessarily causation. Well, it's not causation, that's been debunked, but it is correlation in the fact that it appears to have been that way. But actually at 2 years old and plus is where your child would start to display signs of autism if they had autism. And it has now long been thought that autism is actually something that happens before birth. So it's a really interesting thing, but people could swear down that the vaccine caused the autism because that's what they saw, and I don't blame them for that at all. I don't think that's stupid or anything, but it has been debunked. And what is it they're saying in America now? What drug are they saying? Adderall? What are they saying that it causes autism now? Paracetamol. Yeah, right. And again, they're saying that women who take paracetamol, you know, blah, 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 but having a temperature when you're pregnant is way more dangerous than trying to take that temperature down. And it could be the reason you're taking the paracetamol in the first place could be the cause of, you know, like I said, the causation and correlation are two very different things. So just taking a paracetamol, if Tylenol, thank you, but that is a paracetamol, isn't it? Tylenol. But yeah, so it is really interesting to me that people could swear down that's what happened. But you know, a lot of medics are saying it's not true, and with the Tylenol thing, and yet America's gone big on it. That's it. That's what causes autism. It's preposterous. You know, it could be the disease that you had that you're taking the paracetamol for that has caused the autism. Not that I'm saying that it is, but it could be. There's nothing to say that it is the paracetamol that you took because you were ill that caused it. It could be the illness you had to take the paracetamol. Do you see what I mean? So it is, I don't know. Anyway, do you still take vaccines if they're offered to you? I'm fine with it. I'm like, yeah, jab me up as long as it's not a live vaccine, because I can't have that because my immune system, it would be dangerous. But other than that, I'm happy. I'll take anything you want. I haven't got a problem at all. But it is fascinating to me that in the West we've become so cocky, haven't we? We've become cocky about illnesses and go, well, I haven't seen anybody who's gone blind by measles. No, because the measles vaccine was there. Oh, I haven't seen many people around with polio. No, because the polio vaccine was there. And there are countries in the world where people would walk for days and days and days and days to get their child vaccinated. And yet we just can't be bothered to go to the GP and get it done. I just find it really interesting that we've just, in the West, we've become lazy and sloppy and entitled and arrogant. You can't control disease. We saw that with COVID. Dave is in Manchester. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. I'm really well, thank you. Have we become a bit slack in the West about diseases?
Yes, absolutely. People don't have any sense of consequence, and they don't make informed decisions. You know, just say no or be defiant.
Yeah.
So I was vaccinated against everything, you know, before I was 1 year old because I was raised in Papua New Guinea.
Oh, wow.
So
So you'd have had typhoid, diphtheria.
Yeah. TB.
Rabies.
I've got a massive scar on my arm actually because my TB one. I don't remember any of this because I was only a baby, but yeah. Measles are there, a lot. But I saw children and like all sorts on a daily basis, you know, a lot of polio, and so I saw people suffering and dying from it, and you know, I would ask, like, because I was, you get afraid when I was a kid, but my parents would tell me, don't worry about it because I was vaccinated,
Wow, that is an incredible thing, isn't it, when you see it? I mean, like I said, I saw, there was a girl at my school who had polio, polio, and I think one of her legs was deformed. I think we didn't really pay much attention. We didn't really care. She was brilliant, but yeah, we were told by the school that to not be horrible. But so we saw it, and certainly when I was a kid, there wasn't. I don't remember there being a measles vaccine in the 70s. I don't remember there being one. So we would see kids that had become quite seriously ill with measles. But these days, nobody sees it, do they?
No, but they should inform themselves, though. People don't seem to know anything.
I agree.
And it's like, I mean, I never got the COVID one. But I'm not an anti-vaxxer or anything. I just decided not to go anywhere. I stayed in and I stayed away from people. I never caught COVID. I'm not boasting, but even during that, people didn't care. There was a pub up the road that kept having karaoke nights. Sharing microphones.
Oh my goodness!
So it's just, you know what I mean. So I was like, well, what? It's no wonder, is it? And then they blame. No one takes responsibility.
I agree.
Anymore.
Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything.
If they, because the fact is that COVID one, as you were saying before, it was about how it was, how it was developed.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But nobody knew. I mean, why didn't people know? This is the thing I don't understand. If I thought something, if I sat there and gone, well, that's been made a bit quickly, I then went and looked it up and decided that, okay, so it hasn't really. It looks like it has, but with all of the laboratories in the world working on one, it's not actually that quick.
No. I mean, my mum takes it. My mum gets it. She has a thing called myotonic dystrophy, so it affects her lungs.
Oh, yeah, so she would then. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing. People don't realise how lucky we are. And like I say, from growing up in a third world country where it's, because I had diseases when I was there. I had malaria 6 times.
Wow.
I had a thing called Kawasaki's disease. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so these aren't things you can be vaccinated against. But I saw firsthand. I'd see it all the time. Mothers holding their babies, and they'd be. I mean, they wouldn't survive. They couldn't do anything about it. But because
measles causes.
Cecil Rhodes that said it is to be born British is to win. First prize
to win the lottery of life, yeah. And that's the thing, is that measles causes brain swelling as well, and that causes horrendous sort of neurological issues.
Yeah,
horrific.
It's horrific.
And like you said, they don't survive. And there was a child that died in Britain last year of measles.
Yeah.
And you just think, that is such a tragedy.
It is. Yeah.
Such an unnecessary tragedy. And that isn't the fault. That isn't the fault of the parent that may not have vaccinated the child. That's the fault of all the parents that don't vaccinate their children.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's again, I mean, I've not got children in them, but I think that some people, when we were kids, I mean, my mum. No one would choke or anything because my mum knew how to.
Yeah.
Everyone's mum, mums were St John's ambulance trained. Your dad would fix the car himself.
You're so right. I remember one time, I've got to tell you this, Dave, that I was sat on top of a slide. I was probably only about 7 years old, and I was eating a banana, and I bit into the banana, and there was a bee on the banana. I didn't notice it. Anyway, It stung me in my mouth. And within seconds, my throat swelled up and everything. And my mum was a veterinary nurse, and she saw this happening, and she grabbed one of the tubes, breathing tubes, out of her bag, and rushed out to the garden and thrust it. It probably hadn't been cleaned from the Alsatian that it was in, half an hour ago, and thrust it down my throat. Within about a minute, the swelling had gone down and everything was fine. But that saved my life. But you're right, mums wear that.
You have to be and they were responsible. You know, it's a responsibility. Like I said, I'm not a parent, but you know, like I make decisions for myself and for people around me based on. I make informed decisions. I find out before you know. Before people just now go, no, I'm not having that, and then it's like, well, trust me, or side effects. I mean, there are side effects to all sorts, but trust me, there are side effects to typhoid if you get that.
Yeah.
You know, and there is
malaria, which is with you for life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and you know, there are, like you said, there are nations around the world that would give anything to have their children vaccinated, and we've just become entitled and arrogant, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Brilliant call, Dave. Thank you. Absolutely perfect. That was spot on. Thanks very much indeed. That's Dave in Manchester. I'm just going to take a very quick break, but I will be back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning. It's Petrie here with you with Talkback, and that's what you're doing. And you're talking back about vaccines, as we learned that the UK lost its measles elimination status from the World Health Organization yesterday. Not for the first time, but it's gone. And we hope to get it back at some point, but we can only get it back if people start vaccinating against measles, and that would start with children. But it's not just childhood vaccinations that are the problem. It is adult vaccinations as well. We're just not taking them. We're not taking them up. We're not having them, and I just wonder why. I'm a jabber. I'll very happily have any vaccine that is safe for me to have. I can't have what's the one when you not TB. Tetanus. Can't have tetanus. That would be very bad for me. And there's lots of, I think that's because of live. I think that's a live vaccine. But anyway, because I went into a hospital to have a tetanus jab, and just happened to mention the drugs I was on, and the doctor went pale and said, "I'm not giving you this vaccine," and it had contraindications, death. So yeah, not that one. But so I'm very careful with vaccines. I'm very careful that I check I'm allowed to have them. But once they say yeah, it's fine, I'm in there. Sarah said, I did my GCSEs and one of my A-levels at a national residential college for disabled students in Coventry. This was some time ago, but there were a few students who had a brain injury due to a flu virus going rogue. The father of a friend of mine died of multiple organ failure due to the flu virus doing the same thing. I urge people who are offered a vaccine to take up the offer. And once you're over 65, I think they're free anyway, aren't they? I think COVID had a massive negative effect on vaccines, said Ernie. I agree. I think that's where it comes from. Well, MMR and COVID. People started to distrust the government when it insisted that everyone should be vaccinated, when it was only the elderly and vulnerable that were dying. They said that fit young people were putting the vulnerable at risk by not having the vaccine, and people thought, why? That's when the conspiracy theories started, and people started to think governments could use vaccines to control us under the guise of it is good for us. And I agree, I think that was a fundamental mistake that they made. I don't think it's a fundamental mistake to ask for herd immunity. But the whole of COVID, I think they should have asked the vulnerable and the old to isolate and let everybody else get on with their lives. That's what and I would have been one of those vulnerable. I was on the extremely vulnerable list, so I would have been told to stay at home. But I think that's what should have happened. That just us were told to stay at home and everybody else just get on with their lives. It would have been fine. You'd have had the flu and then you'd have been okay. And it would have saved us billions. Anyway, I wasn't running the country at that point. Maybe next time. Sheldon, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, my love?
Hello, the erudite lady.
Hello. Are you a jabber?
And the erudite brother you have, Andrew.
Andrew, yeah. Do you enjoy him? He's good, isn't he?
He was brilliant.
Yeah, he's very good.
Yeah, in fact, I'm starting to worry about him. He could usurp you, you know. I'm not really sure about him.
Oh, he'll be back. It's really interesting, because I have to be honest and say he's my brother, but he's not here because he's my brother. He's here because he's an exceptional journalist.
He is an exceptional journalist, and his whole demeanour was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. He's brilliant. I'm glad you like him. I'll let him know. He'll be happy with that.
I thought he was brilliant. Anyway, let's go back to what we're talking about. So, when we come to vaccinations, 1948 I was born, jobs came in about 1952, all the people, this wonderful person David you had earlier on, knew all about the people he knew who had polio, so did I. And it was a terrible world, and there were lots of people who had all sorts of illnesses which were basically preventable.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, we have a load of people at the moment who are listening to anti-jobbers. We're not going to go into that, because I'm going to tell you something about my wife and I. My dear wife, during the COVID epidemic, she had a compromised immune system. So I decided she was going to stay at home and I was going to do the shopping and all the rest of the stuff we had to do, and I was going to mask up and stand outside huge queues in Tesco's, etc., wherever I wanted to go. And I did it all through the whole thing. We had 3 separate jobs, and the 3 separate jobs were all from different companies, and we didn't have a blame on us, not a thing.
Mm.
So that goes to prove to me that the injections worked.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine with the injection as well. I was absolutely fine, and because I was one of the vulnerable as well, Sheldon. So
I know, I heard you saying. Yeah.
So I was in the queue with other people, and you know, I was grateful. I was really grateful to have the vaccine. I think I only had 2 though. Why would I only have had 2? Maybe I did have 3. But anyway, yeah.
I thought you had 3.
Yeah, I probably did. So I was absolutely fine. But some people do, you know, there are reports, there are studies now looking at long COVID, but that's from the disease itself, not from the vaccine. But also looking into claims of harm from the vaccines. And look, you know, millions and millions and millions of people took these vaccines. And the percentage of people reporting any problems is tiny.
Very tiny. I don't believe that any of the conspiracy theorists about vaccinations are correct. I mean, when I was a young man, if I had not been inoculated, that's what we used to call it when I was a young man, I would have had all sorts of diseases which I didn't need to have.
Yeah. And it is tragedy that people are getting harmed, really badly hurt kids by measles, and one died. When you just think...
And especially the female population, because do they understand what rubella is?
Yeah.
I mean, it destroys women's lives, rubella.
Yeah. Yeah, it can harm the baby, it can kill a baby, can't it, if you're pregnant?
It can kill a baby in the womb, yes.
Yeah. I mean, at school, I don't even think permission was sought from parents, you know. I think we just turned up and got injected with whatever they had going spare and knocking around the school.
Correct. Nobody asked my mother if I was going to be inoculated.
No.
It was inoculation day.
That was it, yeah, I remember it really. I remember them really well. There was more than one as well. There was quite a couple.
Oh, yes, yeah.
We'd all be lined up and just jabbed and then just sent on our way back to class.
Off you go, yeah. So, in all honesty, I mean, science is the scientific people behind medical care are brilliant.
Oh, incredible.
They are.
I'm in awe.
In the world.
I am totally in awe of everything that they do. I think it's extraordinary. And I was saying about these new vaccines.
Just like David, your previous caller, my father had malaria after the Second World War, and he suffered with it all his life afterwards because it doesn't go away. It comes back.
Yeah, it comes back periodically, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yes. Now we can have something which will help you to prevent that when you're in the fields of conflict. Isn't that wonderful?
It's amazing. I'm absolutely in awe. And the vaccine, the invention of the vaccine, has been the single invention that has saved more lives than anything else that we've done. I mean, hygiene has a part to play in all of these things, but vaccination programs across the world have really... We would still be in the dark ages with diseases if we didn't have vaccines.
If we didn't have them, we would be in an awful state.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan of vaccines. I do